happy and give your car a sparkling shine with the Tidal Wave.
The move once again. So we're moving again. This is South heading towards the Arts District. A crowd, of maybe 100 or so people. It's hard for me to see. You guys probably have a better vantage point from SkyCal, but oops. And now, see, this is where it's going to get ugly again, because now they're throwing glass bottles. Now they're throwing rocks again at the police, water bottles, etc.
Yeah, what we see, Lori, is we can see the crowd, a lot of them running, and we see we see a projectile there. We see officers approaching quickly, and like they're moving them back to where we don't know, right? But that's what we noticed.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, we don't, of course, know the police strategy, but we've been all standing here for probably 15, 20 minutes, nothing going on except for a lot of yelling. And then all of a sudden, we saw the police kind of mobilize. We saw the crowd start to run. So, we see this from time to time, and you can already see now it's kind of de-escalated, and we've moved just not that far down the street, and once again they've stopped. So this is kind of a repeat we saw yesterday, even yesterday, with these crowds as they kind of splintered off, and police had to kind of address the crowds in different parts of the city.
Laura, you were on the scene when during the BLM protests. So can you, just now, what's the difference here? When I asked you before about is it organized? Are there people that are on megaphones or, talking to the crowd, either encouraging them or reminding them of why they're there? Can you point that out or maybe make the contrast?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. I think during the BLM protests, first of all, they were much larger, consistently larger for the days that we were covering them. And they did seem to be more on point. There were lots of organizers who were continually leading the chants, changing the chants, or people just on megaphones kind of elucidating their viewpoint about what was happening and their viewpoint about the issues for that protest. We have not seen that as much here today, at least. Yesterday, we did see a little bit of that, but not as much. Here, we have seen also, I will say, much more destruction, much more profanity written on the streets and on the buildings and the walls. So it's a kind of a different tone, I would say, to this protest than the BLM protests. But again, I think I was mentioning earlier, even today from yesterday the demographic was quite a range of ages in that crowd, young and old and even families. And this crowd here is a much younger crowd. It's a much, late teens, 20s kind of crowd. And that in and of itself sometimes, depending on the group of people, that creates a different atmosphere in that group of people. And that's what we've seen here today.
All right, I'm glad you explained that, Lori, because I just remembered on the top of mind what happened during those protests, and I know you were there. So I figured you could sort of, walk us through what's happening. And maybe it kind of makes you wonder if it's not, maybe it's social media that has really driven people to the sites where they are. But you set it up for us that there doesn't appear to be really a lot of organization or particular leaders, so to speak.
And I will say in both those protests and in these protests last night, you know, at the end of the night, towards the end, you always seem to get kind of the agitators, right? The troublemakers who are not necessarily connected to the cause that brought the people out, but who are just trying to take advantage of a chaotic situation. We saw that in BLM, and we saw that last night as well with some of the unrest that happened, some of the tagging and some of the looting. You know, those were not people who I would consider necessarily connected to the cause that brought out the bulk of people over the weekend. They're just, you know, hangers-on who are trying to stir things up and use it to their advantage.
Lori, does it feel like the crowds have kind of come together? Because we've been looking at different pockets in downtown LA with various protests, but very each other. Does it look like they're kind of coming into a unified crowd, or are they just in pockets around downtown LA?
I think they're in pockets around downtown LA, and I think that it would certainly be the strategy of the police to not allow them to kind of recongregate. This crowd, you know, we're way on the outskirts now from where we were yesterday. I mean, yesterday we were way further north towards the 101. We're heading towards the 10 this way and towards the Arts District. So I think they really are trying to dissipate them. I mean, it's difficult for me to know because I'm just with this crowd, but we have not seen them growing in number in terms of actually meeting up with other groups of protesters. I will tell you, I can hear here on the ground, I hear a lot of glass breaking, so perhaps things are escalating as they move further down towards the Arts District.
All right, our Lori Perez joining us live from downtown LA, where those protests have now continued for a fourth day. We want to say good evening to everyone and welcome you to an early edition of KCAL News at 8 alongside Juan Fernandez and Mike Rogers at the desk. Good evening, everyone. I'm Susie Sa. Again, we have been following these protests, continuing coverage here on KCAL News in various parts of Southern California tonight, not only in downtown LA, but also in Santa Ana, where protests have also gotten very heated as well. This after immigration raids, we believe, over the weekend as well and today. And Mayor Karen Bass with the city of Los Angeles saying today that she believes that there have been 5 at least known raids that have taken place. And because of that, there have been a lot of passions and anger and families who have no answer where their loved ones might be, and a lot of people who are concerned.
He was saying since Friday when those first raids played out at a Home Depot, at a donut shop, and of course at that fashion house in downtown Los Angeles, where the bulk of the protests started on Friday, and it started escalating over the weekend, Friday into Saturday, then Saturday into Sunday, and of course Sunday being the worst that we've seen so far.
That's right. First time we're seeing in Orange County today, as we've been talking about another protest that started up in Orange County late this afternoon. Let's go live now to our Orange County reporter, Michelle Geely, who is live there on the ground to tell us more now. Michelle?
We've just been hit with smoke from the pepper spray. So let me go back to you guys, and we'll come back when we can catch our breath.
All right, Michelle, you do that. You take care of yourself and your photographer. Of course, situations we've seen over the weekend, Mike Rogers, of reporters and photographers being in the line of fire when it comes to some of these pepper balls and also the tear gas canisters.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know, Tim Kimball's already been hit. Tim Kimball, Michelle's photographer, has already been hit by tear gas a couple times tonight. He actually got a pepper ball to his torso when all of that was happening. And I do want to update the situation in Santa Ana because that has been kind of evolving, and you can see they are still using tear gas. They pushed those people away from the federal steps where they were, and now they're pushing them actually towards the federal building. So we're continuing to monitor that situation. SkyCal is going to head back downtown. I also want you to know that there's now starting to be, as we look live now, this is again in Santa Ana here, as Michelle and her photographer Tim Kimball doing a great job and obviously pushing away, far enough away from where the law enforcement line is. And you can see just behind that flag, that Mexican flag, you can make out the patrol car there on the right-hand side. You can see that line of police officers that is there trying to quell that crowd and push them back. Now, it looks like there is a mix of federal officers as well as local Santa Ana Police Department officers. What we had been dealing with, the situation we've been dealing with earlier, is that federal law enforcement was far outnumbered from the protesters that were standing on the steps. We saw a really intense situation with a protester was wearing a mask and was wearing a yellow sweatshirt that was throwing things at federal law enforcement agents rather. One of those agents with a lethal, munition, a lethal weapon, a rifle, was actually pointing it at that protester and kind of waving his hand towards him. And you see what we're looking at right now is people pouring water on their eyes. That is to get rid of and you can see the pain that they're in. I mean, tear gas is not a fun situation at all. Pouring water is your second option. Milk really is the best thing to pour on your eyes if you're in that situation. But you can see these guys are just, continuing to pour. But I want to point out, they've been tear gassed. They know how badly it hurts, and they're still in the area.
That's right.
Right? So these people are still wanting to protest. And I would say, with the exception of a couple of people in that situation, it has been fairly calm out there. There have certainly been people that have been kind of...
Why settle for one type of asset when you can have many? eToro empowers you to mix up your portfolio.
Took that person down into custody, ripped the mask off his face, but they're still launching tear gas and pepper balls and all of those things at these protesters. Michelle got caught up in it. You see other people here getting caught up in it as well that are dealing with all of this situation as Michelle and Tim Kimball try to walk back. And we apologize for the people that are less than happy to see our cameras there as the situation is tense, it's heated, and there's a lot going on down there.
No doubt. And this is Michelle Geely's camera that we're looking at right now, Mike.
Correct.
And throughout the day, it's kind of ping-pong between downtown LA and Santa Ana.
Right.
Things kind of get heated in downtown, things calm down in Santa Ana, then it's the reverse. And nightfall is not too far from right now, so a big concern with that.
Yeah, it's definitely the ebb and flow. And what's happening in Santa Ana, the reason we believe that it popped off in Santa Ana today is because there were raids in Santa Ana. Michelle had told us there was one at a Carl's Jr., one at a Home Depot, and that's how this haul started on Friday when we had the raids in LA County.
That's right.
And there's Michelle. I don't know if she can hear us or if she's ready yet.
Michelle, are you okay?
Yes, sorry. Yes. That's a first for me. I apologize. I thought that I could run faster than the smoke, and that didn't happen, obviously. But two people here were so kind and just doused me with water, and we're good. Everybody seems to be fine here, but okay, they're pouring milk in a woman's eyes here. That was powerful and strong and unexpected, honestly, although it has been happening for the last several hours. But it looked as though maybe there were some officers taking people into custody, and we were trying to kind of get a view of that. And then the officers started lobbing deep into the crowd, because we've kind of tried to keep ourselves farther back so we can not be hit with it. But they were throwing these projectiles, this less than lethal stuff, very, very deep into the crowd, so really not many people could escape it. Tim got hit again. Okay, here we go again. We're going to move. Okay. We're going to move back so we don't get hit again. Because like I said, they're throwing very deep into the crowd, obviously trying to push everybody out of this area. Just to put it in perspective, people are running toward Ross Street. So this is Santa Ana Boulevard and Ross Street, right near the very, very large federal courthouse, the Reagan building. So the tactic must be to get people away from that one federal building where they have blocked the door, and where earlier in the day employees were trying to get out. And so they're trying to drive people into the center of town, which is kind of the historic Old Town district.
Michelle, we appreciate your reporting so much, but we do want you and your photographer to stay safe. So please, if you can get to a safer area for us, and we will come back to you. But as you can see from Michelle's picture, things getting pretty intense there in Santa Ana as protesters sort of walk back from the law enforcement agencies who are pushing them back from the federal building right now.
And there's that confusion, Susie. Was it a firework? Was it an explosion? Was it another round of tear gas? Was it the less than lethal weapons that are being thrown into the crowds there? Very confusing. So our Michelle Gillian, her photographer, they're going to move into an area that's a little bit safer. But you can see, as Michelle's talking about wanting to disperse the crowd, you can see where some of those orange barriers are and where the crowd is now. They've created quite a bit of separation between the federal building there and where these people are running.
All right, we have another reporter on the ground. Let's go to our Tom Waite now, who joins us live. Tom, where are you?
And Susie, we're just about a half a block away from LAPD headquarters. You can see it there just up the block. There's a gathering of officers just out in front. This is First Street in Los Angeles. Still a lot of people out on the streets tonight, kind of walking around, a lot of air support. We're not too far from Lori Perez. She's a few blocks down the street from us, kind of in an area, I think, where there's a higher concentration of people. There's still a lot of volatility here, you know, as this is kind of the area where a lot of some of the skirmishes between police and the crowd played out. Just a short time ago, I saw police having to use their less than lethal weapons. They fired some of those some of those objects back at protesters when they were being hit with objects, either water bottles or other objects that were being thrown. Sometimes plastic, sometimes glass bottles were being thrown. In fact, I was just standing next to a group of officers a few minutes ago when a glass bottle was hurled at them and came very close to hitting all of us. So it's still a volatile situation out here. There's still a lot, there's a lot of anger here on the streets and a lot of people, I think, just trying to channel that in a way that is practical and also nonviolent. But of course, there's also people out here still causing a lot of problems. In fact, it's even hard to show you some video and some shots because we have so much, there's so much graffiti here with a lot of bad language, so we're trying to avoid showing a lot of that stuff. But it does look like the LAPD has done a pretty effective job, and maybe there's other departments out here as well, done a pretty effective job in breaking things up. There's not a large concentration of people here as we've seen the last few nights. Obviously, that's by design. They're trying to get people to leave and to move on to avoid another night of confrontations and violence. The LAPD has just a swarm of officers right up the street from us, and they're also positioned at various buildings, City Hall, some of the other buildings downtown, county buildings, and other office buildings where there's been a lot of graffiti or vandalism. So I think they're trying to tamp this all down now, and it's unclear if any of these National Guard soldiers have arrived or Marines. We've not seen any of them, at least not in a way that some dramatic arrival, right? So what we're seeing and I think you're seeing now down the road there is a larger concentration of some of the remnants of the larger crowd that was out kind of concentrated in the City Hall area, if you were watching our coverage earlier, kind of where Jasmine Veal was. So a lot of those people were pushed out. They moved columns of officers in, started firing some tear gas and other non-lethal deterrent measures, and that kind of really broke things up. That was probably a couple hours ago maybe, and that really kind of broke up the crowd where we were, and now you kind of see them pushed down the block there. That's still on First Street, just down the street there, and that's kind of where everybody seems to be. That seems to be the largest amount of people that I've seen in the several block area that we've been walking around near City Hall. So that kind of gives you a lay of the land right now. It's interesting because at times things seem kind of quiet, and then I think Lori Perez was just saying it can turn in a second. Someone throws something or someone revs up an engine and it hits the gas, and it can really sort of rile people up. But at this point right now, it looks like they've done a pretty effective job with their tactics anyway of getting people dispersed.
Yeah, it's great to see this, Tom, because not only are we seeing people walking hand in hand, we saw a couple walking through there. You do see some protesters as well, but Susie, look at this. They're letting traffic through the area as well.
It's true. So, Tom, I was wondering, those people who were passing you by, the demonstrators, are they walking away from the larger group that was broken up?
It looks It looks, Susie, right now like people are kind of walking toward the larger crowd that's down the street from me. I think that's the crowd that Lori was following earlier. So that crowd, I think a lot of those people were in near the spot where I am right now, which is basically like just a block away from City Hall, less than that. So that seems to be where everybody's moving, and I can see a LAPD chopper kind of hovering in that area. Kind of, I think it might be near Japantown, in that area there.
Old Tokyo, yeah.
It seems like that's where people, Little Tokyo, excuse me. People have moved. That was. Yeah, thank you for correcting me on that.
No
I'm such an
problem,
idiot.
Tom. Of course.
But yeah, that is the area where you're seeing people in concentration. I think the police kind of in a more macro way are doing what they do when people are concentrated in one spot. They when they form those skirmish lines, they kind of collapse, and it kind of disperses the crowd. It seems like that's what they're doing, just sort of on a larger scale, and they move in very quickly, and it's kind of like a shock and awe kind of thing. It scares people, they run, they scatter, and that's kind of what we've been seeing playing out in the last couple hours here.
Yeah, so, all of us wondering what nightfall will bring, and of course, we've watched these protests over the last couple of days turn into some violence. And, we have to say that the majority of these protests, though, have been peaceful. The people who have participated in these protests have been peaceful for the most part. But as Mayor Karen Bass was pointing out today, there are those individuals who will start trouble for whatever reason, who may not even be involved with what is happening here and the real issue at hand. And that's what incites a lot of this violence.
Yeah, in fact, Susie, LAPD Chief Jim McDonald said that there are regular agitators who show up at these demonstrations. They cause trouble, so they're aware that this is going to happen, right, Mike? They know that there's the people who are out there protesting peacefully, as we've seen, and then these folks that kind of like mix in with the crowd and maybe the first ones to throw a bottle or to throw out a firework, and then suddenly everything changes very quickly.
Very quickly, and yeah, I mean, I think the crowd that we're seeing, at least in downtown LA, Santa Ana was a little bit different, but at least in downtown LA, this is the type of activity that the mayor and the governor and all of those people have been saying, this is what it should be. Express your First Amendment right, be here, protest, do what you want, don't get violent. And this is the crowd now that you're looking at live from SkyCal. That's at 2nd and I think John told me Aliso, where this is happening. 2nd and Alameda. Thank you, John. Where this crowd is gathering, and you have the large contingency of law enforcement, like Tom mentioned, but they're not really doing anything, right? Last night by this time we had already had 5 Waymos set on fire. We had trash cans on fire. We had a hot mess of everything going on.
Freeway shut down.
The freeway shut down. CHP cars destroyed and set on fire. Such literally night and day from yesterday to today. And this is what everyone has been calling for. This is what the elected leaders have been asking for, and is this calm protesting. And I want to be clear, LAPD has not even declared an unlawful assembly. That's not the case. Has not been the case yet. And yesterday we had one declared by like 3:15 in the afternoon. And tonight they are putting out on Twitter, or X, they are aware of the crowd. They are moving the crowd. They are issuing what they're calling traffic advisories. They're saying certainly if you got out of hand, you will be arrested, and they have said some arrests have been made. But you're not seeing this, attempt to do any kind of mass detentions, mass arrests. All of this thing is this crowd is much, much smaller than last night and is gathering here at 2nd and Alameda.
Mike, you were saying, though, earlier today that LAPD and law enforcement out there, they're in a much better position than they were yesterday, right?
By far. By far for 2 reasons. A, they have a lot more people. And B, there are a lot less protesters. Yesterday afternoon when I got into work, there was at least, I would say, 1,000 protesters down there. And the problem with yesterday is when that group was so large, they were in so many different areas. Sure. And LAPD could not get enough people in one area to deal with these groups. And so you had kind of these like factions of LAPD that were in different areas trying to deal with the crowd, but it was almost impossible for them to do because the crowd was so large and they were in so many different areas. But today, LAPD was much more strategic about it. They never let them get into Chinatown. They blocked that access off really quickly to keep them away from the 101 freeway, so they didn't have the issues with getting on the freeway, then the issues with throwing things at CHP and all of that situation. So they were very strategic about where they've been pushing the crowd today. And because of that, every time, and we've talked about this, every time they get to an intersection, the crowd starts to split just a little bit. On the left side of your screen is live pictures from SkyCal, where it looks like a couple of those arrests are being affected right now. You can see two of those people that appear to be in handcuffs, 2 or 3 appear to be in handcuffs and sitting on the wall there. And who knows what they've been, you have some more sitting on the ground there. Well, they're not in handcuffs though. And who knows what they've been arrested for, failure to disperse, if they threw something, you know, all of that will be sorted out by either the DA's office or the city attorney. But in large part, such a different scene than we saw last night.
Sure, and you know, with all the help that the LAPD does have, Chief McDonald also declaring that citywide tactical alert as well, Mike.
Yeah, citywide tactical alert, which means nobody goes home. The chief spoke in his press conference earlier about how they were able to, auxiliate 400 additional officers into the downtown area to be there. Part of that, and we've talked about this so much with the conversation regarding the National Guard and federalizing the National Guard. The way it works at a local level, you have LAPD. If LAPD needs help, then they go to the sheriff. And that's what happened last night. The sheriff augmented them with 100 extra LA County Sheriff's deputies. The sheriff for Los Angeles County as a whole is essentially the emergency coordinator. So then the sheriff will make it the decision himself. We need additional mutual aid to support LAPD, not even to support his own agency, but to support LAPD. So it goes, LAPD makes the request to the sheriff makes the request to outside agencies, which happened last night, which we got Pasadena, Burbank, Alhambra, Montebello, Torrance PD, all came in to support them. Then, if there is a need beyond that, then that is when the sheriff can go and ask the governor for the National Guard. The problem right now, though, the National Guard has been federalized. So Governor Gavin Newsom doesn't have control over the National Guard. So even if our local officials wanted the National Guard, that's not an option for us right now because they've been taken over by the federal government and they are being used to block the federal buildings. As Mayor Bass pointed out, 2 buildings, one in Westwood and one in downtown LA. And that has been kind of the thing here. And when we talked about this a little bit earlier in our coverage, President Trump, tried to take credit for things not being worse in LA, saying if the National Guard weren't there, then, X, Y, and Z. But I can tell you, I was on the air for 8.5 hours last night. The National Guard did not step foot off the federal building.
Right. And he's sending more.
And Mayor Bass said, to do what? You already have National Guard standing at the federal buildings. Are you going to have more troops come in and stand next to them at the federal buildings? They've not been involved at all in any kind of crowd dispersal measures, despite what the president is insinuating on his Truth Social platform. Now, there is the other question is, are there more immigration raids coming? And will they use those troops to support those immigration raids, to provide protection and provide scene control, if you will, for those federal immigration officers that could potentially be doing that? We have heard 30 days of immigration raids. Nobody has said that officially, right? The mayor, the chief, the sheriff have all said, we don't know what immigration officials are going to do, when they're going to do their enforcement actions, where they're going to do them. So is there a situation where they're bringing in more troops to continue these amplified immigration enforcement operations? We won't know till we know.
Right. Well, it makes sense, right? Because several mayors, including Mayor Bass, has said this is a sanctuary city. We're not involved in helping law enforcement with these immigration raids. So they're
not involved, and according to state law, it prohibits them from even really discussing it. So we talk about how the federal immigration officials don't give the cities and counties any warning. State law would almost prohibit our local officials from even accepting that information. That was a message that was relayed yesterday by either the chief, I think it was by Chief Jim McDonald. So there is no cooperation, there is no coordination with that because there can't be under state law.
Well, and the governor and the mayor both said, we have it handled, we don't need help from the feds.
And by the way, just really quickly want to point out, we are starting to see a social media video of the Marines that have left 29 Palms. We've got a couple sources out there who live in Desert Hot Springs and other areas that have said they've seen the buses start to leave, they've seen the Humvees start to leave. I've got a crew posted up on the 10 freeway so we can see them when they come in. But from what we can tell, they have left 29 Palms.
Within 2 hours or so, we maybe see them in the area.
Yep.
All right. Well, as we've been talking about protests in Santa Ana and in downtown LA tonight, we have our reporter Lori Perez there on the ground joining us live now to tell us about the latest. Lori, what are you seeing?
Yeah, we are at the corner of Alameda and 2nd. I think you guys were talking about this area just a little while ago. We're right in front of the Angel City Brewery, a very popular brewery here in the Arts District. And this is where we have been staged along with the police department and with protesters for about the last 15, 20 minutes. As you said, not a lot going on here, but take a look at their backup here. This is all down this street. They have SUVs and armored vehicles staged. And then we did just note at the end of the block, LAPD has brought in their big white bus. And that's what you see sometimes at concerts or other situations of unrest. They use that because they start to make some arrests, mass arrests, and they load that thing up with people who they are detaining and taking into custody. So perhaps that signals what their intentions are over the next hour or so. But for now, we are just watching as they are kind of keeping an eye on the protesters. And as you said, what a difference in the tone tonight. In fact, as you look back over there, someone started playing some music, and the protesters actually, you can see the signs kind of going up and down. Some of the protesters are dancing. So peaceful at this point, kind of a waiting game, certainly on both sides, each side looking at the other, waiting to see what their next move will be. Certainly we are hoping that it stays peaceful and calm and that there is no escalation. Sorry, I'm trying to listen to what they're saying here. You know, that's usually when they're announcing that, you know, you have to get out of here, you have to go home, or you do face arrest. And again, as I said, we saw them just recently pull up that white bus, which might indicate they want to have that at the ready should there be some people who decide not to disperse. So that's the situation here at 2nd and Alameda at this point. Pretty calm, much different than yesterday where, you know, as Mike was saying, by this point, we'd already seen a lot of destruction and a lot of damage. And the mood seemed to be escalating last night. At this point tonight, that does not seem to be the case. Things remaining pretty calm here, which is just the way we like it.
Yeah, well, they might be at the ready in case they do declare an unlawful assembly, but our Mike Rogers was telling us so far that hasn't happened. Lori, were you able to hear what they were saying over the loudspeaker there?
I couldn't. Let me try and hear. Can you hear what they're saying? No, yeah, it's muffled. We can't hear. There's too much helicopter noise, etc. But I could certainly run over and try and figure out what they're trying to say.
And Lori,
but I mean, they are obviously addressing the crowd.
You know, from your vantage point, Lori, can you tell just if the crowd has grown since you've been there? Has this crowd been getting bigger behind you?
I don't believe it has. It's stayed pretty much the same, much smaller than the crowd that we were following last night, much less boisterous and rowdy than the crowd that we were following last night. It's stayed about the same size. We thought we did see another splintered off of the crowd to the right here, and we thought that maybe they were going to join up, but they did not, and that crowd has since moved on and is not coming in this direction. So no, the crowd size has stayed the same. Some chanting starting up at this point. Someone did just throw something over towards the officers. It looks to be like an empty spray paint can or something like that, but you know, just kind of on standby at this point.
Well, let's hope that doesn't change too much, Lori, because we know we saw it yesterday. We even saw it this afternoon where something very quickly happens and the crowd starts to run, or there's some sort of loud noise or something happens where people start taking off and running, and that creates a little bit of chaos in the community there.
It's true. And, you know, thank goodness that we have been seeing these peaceful protests or more peaceful protests today than yesterday and over the weekend. You know, the reason why President Trump was saying that he brought in those national troops, those 2,000 National Guard troops, was because of the fact that things were getting too violent in his mind on the streets of Los Angeles when he saw those protesters in downtown LA starting on Friday. And then over the weekend, as we've been talking about, things really got heated in downtown LA as the crowds, as Mike mentioned, factioned off into different groups and went onto the freeway. There were different incidents of graffiti and just a lot of things that, obviously, local leaders here do not want to see. And as we've been talking about today, such a different picture today, and perhaps because of what local leaders have really been hammering on, just the fact that, you know, this obviously has turned into a political situation with leaders both locally and in the state of California against the Trump administration, you know, regarding what's been happening here in California. But just the fact that, you know, this many people are out here protesting, and for days now, Juan, you know, for
That's
4
right.
days, it has not stopped. And, you know, if these raids continue to happen, as they are anticipated to do so, then, you know, I imagine that these protests will continue as well.
And the ripple effects are far and wide, Susie. Today, California Attorney General Rob Bonta announcing a lawsuit over the use of these National Guard troops by telling reporters that Trump has, quote, trampled the state's sovereignty, which has been a big concern to lawmakers locally and at the state level.
Well, as we've been watching this protest in downtown LA, we told you there was another one happening in Santa Ana as well. And we're going to bring you, of course, the very latest throughout the night here on KCAL News, and we hope you'll join us and stay with us. But we're going to continue our coverage, as we know these events are very important to everyone here in Southern California and affecting so many people. As we've been talking about, many arrests made, detained by ICE, that was starting on Friday, at various businesses in LA County. And we want to welcome you now to KCAL News at 8.
Did you know that you can have permanent teeth in just 24 hours? That's right. Only 24 hours and your new smile is ready. And with affordable payment options, achieving your dream smile has never been easier. Forget waiting months with temporary teeth or those insanely uncomfortable dentures. Backed by over 20,000 5-star Google reviews and winners of the 2024 Dental Implant Restoration Company of the Year, Nuvia is helping people regain their smiles and change their lives. And the best part, it all happens in only 24 hours. Take the 60-second quiz now to find out if Nuvia dental implants are right for you.
Little Tokyo area, and you can see a number of them. There's a lot of Mexican flags. There's a lot of people honking. We've heard fireworks going off. We have not seen any clashes between police and members of the crowd. Earlier, we did see that. Some of the less than lethal weapons were used against people throwing objects into police lines. So there was definitely a number of confrontations between the officers and the protesters, kind of just for hours near the City Hall area, just a few blocks from where we are. And there definitely were some very tense and volatile moments there. I have to say, though, right now it feels very, very different. I was here Friday night when this all started. It was very intense. You know, obviously tensions boiled over, and you had protesters and police, you know, really going at it for hours. Protesters, you know, throwing things at police guarding the federal building, so on and so forth. That is not what we're seeing tonight. And look, right now it's interesting. I wonder where police are moving now. That line of motorcycle officers has been there for a while. So now it's unclear if they're moving to disperse more members of the crowd at a different place. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just kind of it's a very different situation right now, where you don't have the large concentration of people in the areas where we've seen them. Now, that could change, obviously. We can see right now officers going, you know, moving somewhere to another location. We don't know if that's because there is more people gathering in another part of downtown. Obviously, there's a very fluid situation, so we're not certain how that's playing out. And also, you know, we really haven't seen any of the National Guard soldiers really out in the areas where we are. As Mike Rogers was pointing out, they were brought in to guard the federal buildings, and perhaps there are larger concentrations of them there, but they're not in the streets at all that we've seen, either now or in the hours that leading up to right now, we've just not seen them. So it is very likely, as Mike was pointing out, that they are indeed guarding federal buildings, or maybe they're in different locations. So that kind of, that really gives you a sense, I think, of just how different tonight is. Just giving you a picture here of how police have been able to break up this crowd, and it's separated in a way that we have not seen in days. So if police were trying to, if this was their mission, it's mission accomplished on many levels, because we are seeing a very, very different situation as people have sort of broken up and are in different parts of the city. Now, again, people can gather again. So obviously the LAPD is very much cognizant of that, and they're aware, and they are still, there's a small army of them, as we've been reporting as well. There's a tactical alert going on right now, which means none of them who are on shift can leave until the tactical alert is over. But it's certainly an exhausting time. And the other thing, I know other reporters have pointed this out, and I think Juan and Susie, you've talked about it as well. It's really surreal and shocking to see some of the graffiti. It's just so many buildings have been damaged. I can't even imagine how long it's going to take to clean up downtown. It's just, and a lot of it's profane stuff, and we can't really show it on television, but it's really unfortunate, because it's all over, and it's a lot of it is so many buildings that are damaged and will have to be repaired. A lot of vandalism in that sense. So, but the good news is we haven't seen any major injuries or major incidents occur between protesters and police tonight. That's, of course, the days prior we have seen a lot of that play out. Let's hope it stays that way. It seems very peaceful, again, just on this corner of the city, but things can change.
Certainly can. And Tom, we saw that yesterday, as you mentioned. Mike Rogers, you were reporting on the situation yesterday, the protests that happened in downtown LA and got really out of hand. Mike, those protests. No, Mike is listening to all kinds of.
Sorry about that.
No,
that's okay.
We're trying to track the Marines that are coming out of 29 Palms, and we're just looking.
So they're on their way, right, Mike?
We've seen unconfirmed social media video. We're trying to track that down. They are getting escorts from local law enforcement in the area. We've heard that Riverside Sheriff is escorting them through Riverside County, San Bernardino through the rest. The video that I saw was actually just with San Bernardino. So sorry about that. Just trying to monitor that situation as well. But I think your question was comparison from last night to tonight, and it is starkly different. And I think in a bunch of ways, the crowd is much more peaceful than they were last night. That has allowed LAPD to be in very strategic places and make kind of distinctive moves when they want to make those moves. It's also allowed them to breathe and not be under such like a chaotic, type of situation here. So it has gotten much better than it was last night. Nothing's on fire. No vans aren't driving.
They're letting this car go through the traffic here.
Right. I mean, and to the point where, even last night, John Schreiber, who's our photographer in SkyCal, we were remarking at just the sheer amount of less than lethal, shell casings essentially that were left behind, and it was crazy. And even today, the chief said that they used 600 rounds of less than lethal rubber bullet or foam, projectiles that they were shooting at the crowd, and that is just not what has happened today, which is great for all sides. There was so much, and you heard the mayor talk about it as well. The mayor feels that when the crowds get violent and out of hand like that it dilutes the message that they're trying to portray, and doesn't do what she said, doesn't do any justice to our immigrant communities here who are trying to fight what she deemed as absolutely unnecessary raids across the city of LA and Los Angeles County as a whole. So this is a situation where they're peacefully protesting tonight, so much so that the LAPD has not even declared an unlawful assembly. They're there, they're dealing with them. I think some early decisions by the LAPD really, really helped keep things under control. And I think the big early decision that they made was pushing them away from the federal building. There was the initial clashes. We've seen, and every agent, I'm not criticizing any agency, every agency handles things differently, but we have seen in Santa Ana, we have seen here in Los Angeles, the federal agents are much quicker to use tear gas, use pepper balls, use less than lethal things, that whether it is warranted or not, the crowd is also agitated, but it just continues to escalate the situation, and it continues to push things forward. And only last night, in rare circumstances, was the LAPD using tear gas. Other than that, they were using the foam projectiles. And I think the big thing that LAPD did early on today with the crowd is get them away from the federal building, get them away from the symbol of what is going on, and get them away from those federal officers who are a little less hesitant to use some of the more aggressive, less than lethal means than the LAPD is.
Yeah, they got the upper hand before things got or escalated as much as it did yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
and you'll watch, I mean, LAPD, and again, because they were more prepared and because the crowd was smaller, LAPD has been able to very continuously, and I think this is probably the longest time I've seen them not push the crowd.
Not move, yeah.
And every time LAPD gets the crowd in a new element and they push them through an intersection, it splinters a little bit, you lose some people in the process. And so LAPD has made a point of that, of pushing them throughout the night and making sure that they can't get into Chinatown like they did last night. They're pushing them kind of to the southeast tonight. So it's just a much different situation, and I think very direct moves by the LAPD has caused that, and I think you have a very much more calm group of protesters.
And there's a lot of spacing between the protesters, too, not that big a crowd, right?
No, it's definitely a smaller, thinned out crowd tonight than what we were seeing yesterday and the day before that and the day before that even. Yeah. But as Mike was just speaking to earlier tonight, LA Mayor Karen Bass speaking out about the protests that started actually as a rally for the release of SEIU President David Huerta.
That's right. She says the raids in the city and surrounding area are causing fear in the community.
We were told that raids would be to look for violent criminals, people who had warrants, but I don't know how you go from a drug dealer to a Home Depot. And it makes me feel like our city is actually a test case for what happens when the federal government moves in and takes the authority away from the state or away from local government.
Well, Mayor Bass also saying descriptions of the city are being exaggerated and most protesters have been peaceful.
Yeah, we're seeing that tonight. She says the small amount of people causing destruction will be held accountable.
Now, the president of California Service Employees International Union out of ICE custody tonight.
David Huerta was detained on Friday while protesting in downtown LA and released this afternoon on a $50,000 bond.
We need to make sure that we fight for the most vulnerable amongst us. And I don't know what journey, I don't know what they have in store for me. I imagine at this point in time, I am their project and they're going to put me as their example of what happens. But I'm prepared to take on that journey and I'm prepared to face that.
Huerta had his first court appearance today as well. He is scheduled to be arraigned on July 7th.
Well, ongoing protests turned destructive over the weekend, as we've been talking about.
And KCAL News reporter Jasmine Veal showing us now where demonstrators left a trail of graffiti and vandalism.
On South Broadway, cleaning crews painting over Graffiti Monday that lined several blocks in downtown LA. Making repairs to buildings with smashed glass along Los Angeles Street. And tow trucks removing burned Waymo cars hours after protests escalated into violence and destruction Sunday night.
It was mayhem.
What was that? Alicia DeQuina lives in downtown and says the actions of a few overshadowed the main message of protesters who had gathered to rally against the multiple immigration operations that took place across LA since Friday.
There's the few that just used it as an opportunity, and then there's the ones that do it peacefully, but they still got hurt. 13-year-old girl got hit in the mouth yesterday with one of those things.
Jamie Klein, a mother, and her husband decided to join hundreds rallying Sunday outside City Hall. She says it was well organized and peaceful as families with kids started to march to the federal building on Alameda.
They were handing out waters. They were telling people, you know, make sure you have a phone number in case you get arrested, but like to write it on your arm or on your clothing.
She says when the LAPD showed up in riot gear alongside the National Guard, that's when things took a turn as they pushed back the crowd.
That's when they started shooting the pepper spray at people. There was no longer going in the air. It was hitting people deliberately.
The LAPD says it made 31 arrests over the weekend with charges ranging from assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer to looting, arson, and attempted murder with a Molotov cocktail. 5 officers were injured. Klein says she noticed later on in the day some people began to arrive with bad intentions.
They were getting ready to fight, and it was like, oh, these are different protesters. These guys, they want confrontation, and they're ready. So it was definitely a different type of protester.
Klein says she hopes more peaceful protesters will be back to make their voices heard here again very soon. Jasmine Beal, KCAL News.
LA Unified Superintendent Alberto Carvalho is reassuring parents tonight and students that graduations will happen as those raids and protests continue.
We are one. At Los Angeles Unified, we have a commitment to protect the rights, the opportunities for every single child, every one of our workforce members, and the families we serve. No questions asked.
Carvalho said earlier today there were federal vans parked within a couple of blocks of 2 LA schools, which he calls an intimidation tactic. He stressed that all graduation ceremonies happening this week will be protected by administrators and school police, which will set up perimeters around the events. They will also provide a protected path for students and parents and to and from all the ceremonies. Tomorrow is the last day of school, by the way, in the district.
And back to our coverage of the protest now. We continue our live team coverage tonight with KCAL News reporter Lori Perez.
Lori, what's the situation where you are tonight?
You know, just a few seconds ago, we heard them announcing that there had been a dispersal order put into place. And we've become quite familiar with the way that LAPD kind of works, and we get a sense of when they're starting to move. And that's certainly the sense that we're getting right now. We've seen them starting to line up a little bit more and get into formation, which seems to indicate to us that they might be making another push any moment now after making that announcement about the dispersal order. Certainly we get the sense that something is about to happen. Still here, though, on the intersection of Alameda and 2nd Street as we head into the Arts District right in front of Angel City Brewery right there. A small crowd continues to have hold of this intersection. They are facing off with police for the past half hour or so, really just chanting. In fact, we heard them chanting peaceful protest over and over. So we have not seen certainly any physical confrontations, really just a lot of yelling and screaming and holding up of their signs, etc., over the past couple of hours as they have been moved throughout the city. This very particular crowd started way over near the federal buildings, and over the past few hours they have been pushed by LAPD forces down a considerable distance, heading into the Arts District now, where again we have been for about the last 30 minutes or so. But so we're just kind of in a waiting game right now, waiting to see what the next move will be by LAPD. An LAPD chopper continues to circle overhead, adding to kind of the drama of this situation. But so far, for the last couple of hours at least, this has been pretty calm here, which has been good to see from here on the ground, especially as you all have been noting, compared to what we witnessed last night with some of the crowd when things really started to get out of control and there was a lot of damage, a lot of destruction, and some very dangerous situations for both the law enforcement and for the demonstrators who lingered into the night. So that's the situation here. Begins to enter into the Arts District.
Yeah, no doubt.
Guys, back to you.
Lori, compared to what you went through yesterday, we know that out-of-control van, which came very close to you, so scary. And we were just looking, your photographer was showing us video of those officers kind of getting those zip tie handcuffs getting ready around their wrists. So they may be calling a dispersal order, and they have at least that visual. They've got those handcuffs ready to go if needed. Yeah.
So you haven't heard of an unlawful assembly declared yet, right, Lori? You haven't heard anything about that yet.
We have not. No, we haven't, but we heard them over the megaphone just a couple minutes ago before I started my report here. We heard them. I thought he was saying that. I'm trying to hear him. I thought he had said that there would be a dispersal order. And as I mentioned in my last live shot, you know, that white LAPD bus is parked just at the end of the block here. So if they're getting their zip ties ready, that bus is parked down there. You put two and two together, and you understand what that means, or what that will mean for these protesters if they do not disperse, that they do face being arrested and taken and put in that white bus and taken away for the night. Guys?
That's definitely what it seems like, right? You have these officers getting at the ready. They've got those plastic handcuffs just in case. What we're waiting for, things change always at night, right? Once the sun sets, things get darker. Perhaps they're waiting for that, giving the order for people to go home, come back tomorrow. But perhaps their day is for tonight, right?
Yeah, and usually, when we see or hear about an order going out in the dispersal order going out by the LAPD, usually that's that precursor to those arrests being made, as Lori was talking about, putting two and two together. When you see that huge bus where they usually detain the folks that they put the cuffs or the zip ties that you were talking about on, if they don't obey those dispersal orders. Obviously, sometimes what happens is those orders go out and protesters get more incited by that, and, the violence continues. But tonight, as we've been talking about, and thank goodness we're talking about it in this sense, that we have seen, for the most part, peaceful protests. I mean, that's where Lori is standing tonight. The one thing that, that sticks out in my mind, and it was very minor, but there was some kind of bottle that was thrown at one of the officers or towards the officers that landed on the street and didn't really hit them. But that's as far as it goes, as far as, I can tell from what Lori has been reporting for the past half hour or so, from where she's been standing. So, Lori, do you feel like that crowd, again, that same number of people there and not getting any larger?
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to be getting any larger. They do seem in the last couple of minutes to be getting louder, but they don't seem to be getting larger, which is, of course, good news. In fact, LAPD wants them to be getting smaller, this crowd to be getting smaller. They do not seem to be getting larger, but they do seem to be getting a little more vocal, which, we've seen over the past couple of nights. They go through kind of these lulls and then they get amped up again. So perhaps that's just what is happening. The sun's going down now. Things, the temperature, literally and figuratively, always seems to change once the sun goes down. So we'll see how things do change again tonight as we enter into the dark hours. But you can see more LAPD officers arriving at this moment, which is also adding to our belief that something's about to go down. I mean, some sort of action is about to take place, because we've been here for quite a while and we have not seen this assembly of police officers, but now we are seeing it.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to keep monitoring the situation there with you, Lori, and get back to you once we know what's going to be happening there.
Now, for a different angle, a different vantage point there in downtown LA, let's go to our Tom Waite, who's also standing by at a corner where he's been watching protesters go by as well. Tom.
Hi there, Susie. So we moved, actually, because we saw all those officers, those motor officers, zooming up First Street. So we came up to City Hall. That's where we are right now, right outside of City Hall. And you can see there's a sort of scattered amount of crowd there, just people kind of lingering here. And then there's a very, solid line of police in, heavily armed, got their riot gear, their shields, all kinds of things there that they're equipped with. And they are standing and staged here right now, doesn't look like there's that sort of tense, volatile situation that we've seen playing out in the last few days. As we've been talking about, this crowd is very much sort of dispersed, and it's scattered, and there's just remnants in little pockets of people here and there, and kind of just wandering around. I think people trying to figure out maybe what to do, where to go. But LAPD, their strategy seems to have worked, which was to kind of break up the crowd, create kind of a situation where there was no real place to reconstitute a crowd. So either by closing down streets or by placing a high concentration of officers in different spots. And so it just kind of created this I think for the people who are out here, a bit of chaos and a bit of an inability to kind of create some continuity. So now what you have is just a lot of people just kind of wandering around looking like, well, what do we do next? It doesn't seem like there is a lot of organization out here. it certainly did not seem that organized earlier either. We just heard a huge boom a few blocks away. That could have been fireworks or any number of things, but it was a very large boom sound. Maybe that's in the area where Lori Perez is. But yeah, so obviously some people are kind of making comments and saying some insulting some of the officers here. But for the most part, they're just sort of standing there, looking at them, and just. The posturing is definitely different than it was. We've seen the situation play out where you have protesters in some cases, trying to antagonize federal officers or police officers, either verbally or throwing things at them, walking up to them with their cell phones and saying things to them. But while that's happening on a smaller scale right now, it's nothing compared to what we saw, and it doesn't seem like we're in that sort of hair trigger situation, where one little thing could happen and then the whole situation explodes and there's clashes. It seems different, and obviously, given what we've seen the last few nights, I think there's a lot of relief probably in Los Angeles, knowing that maybe things, at least at this point, are a lot calmer, which we were happy to say tonight.
Well, let's hope so, Tom. We like seeing that. All right, thank you so much, Tom.
Well, meanwhile, the FBI looking for this man tonight who they say threw rocks at law enforcement vehicles during Saturday's protests. The Bureau putting him on its most wanted list, accusing him of assaulting a federal officer and damaging government property in the city of Paramount. Now, there is a reward of up to $50,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction.
And Susie, several downtown LA stores looted late Sunday night. Look at this, breaking down glass doors, ransacking the places and taking off with merchandise. This is at the Adidas store on Broadway and 7th. Store owners reported this looting and vandalism, which brought LAPD out to the area. They're still totaling up the damage tonight. And a very similar scene at Broadway and 6th, this time at a flagship Jordan store. Jordan Studio 23 had its doors pulled down. The glass was shattered and the store simply ransacked. The LAPD says any businesses that were vandalized need to document all of the damage and report it to LAPD's Central Division. That's where they're handling all the investigations happening downtown.
Loved ones taken into custody in ICE raids on Friday.
Those family members still wondering where they are tonight.
Plus, we're going to take you back to downtown LA tonight, where protests against those ICE raids continue. We'll have more coverage throughout the night here on KCAL News.
Toyota is always ready for adventure, and Rodeo X Rigs takes that to the next level.
Rodeo X Rigs is an off-road and overland community event designed to bring communities together for different nonprofit organizations. I have a 2020 Toyota Tacoma.
In the lower 70s. For more detailed weather, water, and climate information, please visit our website at weather.gov/Atlanta. Here is the hazardous weather outlook. This hazardous weather outlook is for north and central Georgia. For this afternoon and tonight, scattered thunderstorms are expected in Georgia this evening into the early overnight hours. Some storms could be severe, with the primary hazard being damaging wind gusts in the 40 to 60 miles per hour range. And now extended out for the period Tuesday through Sunday, isolated to scattered thunderstorms will linger in parts of north and central Georgia between Tuesday and next weekend. A couple of stronger storms are possible, but confidence in the timing of any severe weather is low at this time. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation is not requested, but spotters are encouraged to submit reports of severe weather through the web by going to weather.gov/Atlanta. Please relay any information about observed severe weather to the National Weather Service. The current time is 11:27 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Here are the 11 p.m. weather observations from around the area. At Atlanta, it was cloudy. The temperature was 73 degrees, dew point 68 degrees, relative humidity 84%, wind south at 8 miles an hour, pressure was 29.93 inches and rising. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was mostly cloudy and 73, wind calm. At Marietta, it was mostly cloudy and 74, wind calm. At Mableton, it was mostly cloudy and 74, wind northeast at 3. At Peachtree City, it was mostly cloudy and 70, wind northwest at 3. At Lawrenceville, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind west at 3. At Cartersville, the temperature was 72, wind calm. At Kennesaw, it was mostly cloudy and 73, wind south at 3. At Hampton, with light rain, it was 70, wind southwest at 5. At Covington, with light rain, it was 73, wind calm. At Monroe, with light rain, the temperature was 73. Elsewhere around the region, at Athens, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind calm. At Gainesville, it was mostly cloudy and 70, wind west at 5. At Columbus, it was cloudy and 75, wind west at 10. At Birmingham, it was partly cloudy and 72, wind north at 3.
On the desk as we continue covering this breaking news of protests in downtown Los Angeles, protest against the ICE raids that started on Friday. This, a fourth night of protest in the city of Los Angeles and also in the city of Santa Ana. A protest got started earlier today. We have reporters at both scenes for you tonight.
And the protests have been peaceful for the most part in both Orange County and in downtown LA. Let's go now to Mike Rogers at the desk for the latest. Mike.
Yeah, here we are at 3rd Street, the chopper overhead, and you can see that there is a far more law enforcement officers than there are protesters down there. I mean, the crowd has significantly deteriorated, especially here at 3rd Street at this intersection. You've got law enforcement now on both sides of them. You've got LAPD there. I mean, even just on the corner of the screen, the right-hand corner there, you've got a small group of people. You've got some of them on the left side as well. But they've basically kind of trapped, basically the people that are in between these two police lines are trapped. It's unclear if LAPD is going to make arrests there. I don't believe, let me double check, I don't believe an unlawful assembly has been declared for them to kind of do that. But yeah, I don't see anything about it. So they're just kind of, moving through 12th and Figueroa. There's a demonstration as well. So we'll try to check that out here in a second too. But not a lot of people. I mean, there are certainly more law enforcement officers than there are protesters down there, which is great. Things are much different, as we keep pointing out, than they were last night. So we'll see what the game plan is here for the LAPD, if they just want to push the remaining ones out that are here, and then see if they can demobilize. I mean, last night they said it took them until 2:30 in the morning, technically this morning, to be able to do that demobilization of those officers that were here. So excuse me, you've got the group here, and like I said, they've blocked them on both sides. So I don't know if that means generally, and just generally when we see that, that means they're going to arrest. If they don't give the protesters anywhere to move to, that usually means that they're going to start making arrests. They're obviously pretty far apart from both those skirmish lines, so it'll be interesting to see if they continue to push those skirmish lines together or what exactly they're going to do to handle that situation. But a much different situation tonight compared to last night, and for a multitude of reasons, as we've discussed, guys.
Mike, one of the questions I've been getting from folks who have reached out is when LAPD goes on tactical alert, you're saying nobody goes home. So does it become a 24-hour shift? How did firefighters kind of handle it, or what happens?
Yeah, different situations based on the needs of the department. I mean, the chief said earlier that some people's vacations are even being canceled.
Wow.
But it basically, they'll keep everybody on, and then you'll have new, they call them watches, that will come on. And if they get enough members between the new watches that are added, then on the back end, maybe if you have day watch or morning watch that was still being held over, they can start to slowly let those people go, especially in a situation like this where there is not a significant amount of protesters left here. But yeah, citywide tactical alert, they can do it in different fashions. They can do bureau-wide. LAPD is broke up into Central Bureau, South Bureau, West Bureau, and Valley Bureau. They can do it just by the bureaus, or they can do it citywide. And in this situation, they've done it citywide, and they're holding everybody over. We don't see any patrol cars here in the shot at the moment, but LAPD is pushing this crowd forward as we're watching that now. So we have that group of skirmish line there with this group of skirmish line here. So we'll see if they're going to sandwich them and make arrests, or if they're going to let those guys go. It's a very interesting tactical situation that LAPD doesn't usually put themselves in, where you are allowed to have the protesters kind of on two sides of them. You see a smaller group of officers there on the left that is keeping that crowd from coming up behind those additional officers. And then on the right, you've got that group that is keeping those guys as well. So they may very well, and you got some shoving there, look at that. So somebody pushed one of those officers, the officer pushed back, and that was enough to disperse the crowd and push the crowd away. Which is interesting, because last night, I mean, this crowd will get out, is being, I don't want to say more skittish, but they're not willing to hang around as long as the crowd last night. Last night, that wouldn't have done anything for anybody. You know, like one of those officers pushing a person, that wouldn't have deterred that crowd at all. This crowd tonight, you saw them scatter when that happened. You've got that line of officers that's moving in here. They're pushing everybody together. That white truck, and I've mentioned this before, the chopper's moving up, but that white truck that was there with the big speakers on it, that is the one that is used to say, go away or go to jail. And so now we've got these officers moving in. I don't know where that car came from, but that's obviously not a great situation for law enforcement to be in with the car there. So we'll see here if they're going to start trying to facilitate arrests or if they're going to let these people that are trapped in the middle out, or if it's too late for that. I mean, there are certainly situations where LAPD says, nope, you've had your warning, and now everyone goes to jail. And
is that strobe, Mike, from one of the protesters?
It's people taking pictures.
Oh, okay.
A huge, photography opportunity. Last night, it was insane how many people were taking professional photos. Even earlier this afternoon, it was almost like a press conference that a protester was giving with so many cameras and microphones that were there. So here we go. The crowds are starting to converge on each other. The bottom half of the skirmish line is not letting that group go past them. So they may have been given warnings, and they may be to a point where we gave you a warning, we told you to leave, you didn't, now you go to jail.
The officers there got closer, Mike, the ones on the top of the screen.
Yeah, they're definitely kettling this crowd and making it so they don't have anywhere to go. Now, sometimes the crowd is a situation where the crowd is, yep, this is what I knew was going to come. I knew I was going to go to jail. I'm ready. Other situations, the crowd may try to break through the skirmish line. We'll have to see how they kind of handle it. But based on the totality of the circumstances, I am a little surprised that LAPD is kind of kettling them this way and potentially wanting them to make arrests. They're going to let the car go through because it seems like that person kind of got stuck in a situation they weren't really prepared for. But we'll have to watch and see how this develops and see if they start making arrests.
Mike, could they give a dispersal order without declaring an unlawful assembly?
Certainly, yeah. They could say in certain situations, we're going to lose our helicopter shot there, but they can say in certain situations, you guys are not in this particular area in the right way. You need to leave or we will arrest you. And they can do that without giving an official unlawful assembly. They can give a dispersal order without an unlawful assembly.
You can tell from our ground shot here live there in downtown LA, the LAPD officers, men and women, showing incredible, just calm right now. As the situation looks like it did intensify for just a minute there, where a protester pushed an officer and the officer sort of pushed back, and that made a big part of the crowd just kind of push all the way back and run back. So that's kind of been what's the biggest, I would say, action, if you will, that we've seen tonight.
That's right.
We haven't, thank goodness, seen a lot of violence that we saw over the weekend. Certainly these protesters and demonstrators just staying peaceful tonight, staying there on the streets of downtown LA. We do not believe a dispersal order has gone out just yet. At least we have not heard of one going out officially, but from the stance of the LAPD officers and from what Lori Perez was showing us, she was seeing some multiple vans, or those big buses that they bring in, the white vans that they bring in, the LAPD brings in after they arrest people in big quantities or big masses. So we'll see what happens here, but for the most part, really, no pushing and shoving like we saw last night, as Mike was talking about, just the violence that was incited last night among some of the protesters. And we have to keep saying some of the protesters, because
protesters
these
and
are
agitators,
not, these are not all the protesters. For the most part, they have stayed peaceful.
Yeah, and last night, I mean, the chief, we talked about this earlier, but the chief said that there are these people that go city to city. And I have to tell you, I mean, we've covered a lot of protests here, and we have seen some of the people that look more professional or more prepared for protests. Yeah. Last night was a big moment in my journalism career, seeing that, because as soon as I saw a guy with a leaf blower, and I said, what is the leaf blower for? And we learned that the leaf blower is used to blow the tear gas away when it is sprayed at them. And I mean, if you are showing up to a protest and you bring a leaf blower with you, you obviously have done this before and are using that tool to try not to be overcome by tear gas. And we also saw, Dean on our digital desk found some video of people using hammers to break up the concrete to be able to throw it at CHP officers. I mean, that was such a violent group yesterday. And what protests that started, like today's, was peaceful in the day. And as soon as about 3:30 hit, things took a real bad turn. 5 o'clock, the Waymos were on fire. after that, it really went downhill from there. And thankfully, that's not the situation we're seeing tonight.
Well, leaf blowers, Mike, umbrellas. I don't know many protesters that go around with spray paint bottles or cans in their bags. But if you're talking agitators, professional agitators, they have all that ready to go.
And there was a situation too. So the CHP cars. So the protesters got on the freeway. CHP came in to push them out. Their cars were on the freeway, and then from the top of the overpass, that's when they started throwing all those things. We even saw them pick up a street sign and throw a street sign on top of it. But to your point of what they're coming prepared with, we also saw them pour a liquid down from the overpass onto the CHP car that very quickly ignited. And thankfully, CHP had the wherewithal to have fire extinguishers ready. So CHP, while trying to hide under the underpass so that they weren't getting pelted with concrete, was trying to spray the extinguisher far enough to put out their car that was on fire. And thankfully, they were able to. And the CHP car never actually caught fire. But they did have to be towed. I think we ended up seeing like 3 CHP cars that had to get towed out from under the freeway.
And was that a Molotov cocktail, Mike? How did that liquid ignite? I'm just kind of wondering. It's wild.
Yeah, so they used kindling. So they were able to get some straws or not straw, but you know, things on the ground.
Paper
or
whatever.
whatever. They were using cardboard. They were also using some, not hay, but something to that similar effect. They would bunch it together, light it, and then toss it down there. And then once it was down there, then they poured the liquid on top of it. And that's what you really got the fire going. And again, thankfully, CHP was able to put it out.
And luckily, a child wasn't hit or anybody else for that matter, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and especially of that driver, that minivan driver. There was a guy with a dog that had to, get out of the way. There's the minivan driver at one point, which I just got, the detective from Sheriff's Department actually just called me about it, so I got to call him back. But was driving through Union Station, got so close to a bicyclist, the bicyclist got scared and fell off his bike.
Oh, gosh. All right, Mike, thank you so much. Our breaking news coverage continues here with this. Hundreds more military troops are being deployed to Los Angeles tonight. Mike's been telling us that. At the direction of the president.
Oh, this as the state is filing a lawsuit to get them out. KCAL's Leslie Marin joins us now with all the details. Leslie.
Yeah, Susie, Juan, both the governor and the Pentagon confirming tonight that an additional 2,000 National Guard troops will be deployed here to Los Angeles, as you said, at the direction of the president. Shortly before that announcement came down, well, the White House confirmed that 700 Marines from 29 Palms would be landing in Los Angeles in the next 24 hours. So this now makes a total of 4,000 National Guardsmen, including those Marines. You add that on top of the Guardsmen there. The governor claims most troops are sitting unused right now in federal buildings and called the move reckless and pointless. Now, City Attorney Rob Bonta confirmed the troops are activated for 60 days, and right now state officials don't know when they will stand down. Now, the National Guard and the Marines' mission is solely to help protect federal personnel and federal property. In the meantime, Governor Gavin Newsom is now suing the Trump administration for deploying the National Guard without his consent. The judge is asking, or the state, I should say, is asking a judge to declare it unconstitutional and for the court to halt any future deployments. We heard from State Attorney Rob Bonta and the president today.
An order that abused the federal government's authority and violated the 10th Amendment and federal law. An order that skipped over multiple rational, common sense, strategic steps that should have been deployed to quell unrest and prevent escalation. As a result, I, in partnership with Governor Gavin Newsom, are suing President Trump.
He's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order.
And President Trump went on to say today that had he not sent in the Guard, LA would have been, quote, completely obliterated. Again, the National Guard, well, we have not really seen, or we have not seen at all, leave federal property. That is their mission, to protect that property. Many of the clashes happening on city streets that we are seeing are with local law enforcement and protesters. To help out local law enforcement, with the governor announcing today that he is adding an additional 800 state and local law enforcement to help out here in Los Angeles. Susie?
All right, Leslie, thank you so much. Family members of people taken into custody during Friday's raids on businesses in the Fashion District want to know what's happened to their loved ones. Some of them spoke out this morning in downtown LA.
The group raised signs with pictures of their loved ones. They say ICE agents took dozens of indigenous immigrant workers into custody, and since then they've struggled to find and make contact with them. Ambiance is the company that employs these workers who make clothing.
I was present during the raids. I saw with my own eyes the pains of the families, crying, screaming, not knowing what to do, just like me. That's why the families demand free of all workers, legal representation, and due process.
Well, family members also say they believe the LAPD coordinated with ICE despite the city's sanctuary status. LAPD leaders have repeatedly denied that.
Night 4 of protests against ICE raids underway tonight.
An update as our live team coverage continues next. Danny?
Hi, Ron. Good evening, everyone. We have been seeing the marine layer clouds. More doom gloom tomorrow, and some of us are going to feel warmer.
Some storms could be severe, with the primary hazard being damaging wind gusts in the 40 to 60 miles per hour range. And now the extended outlook for the period Tuesday through Sunday. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms will linger in parts of north and central Georgia between Tuesday and next weekend. A couple of stronger storms are possible, but confidence in the timing of any severe weather is low at this time. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation is not requested, but spotters are encouraged to submit reports of severe weather through the web by going to weather.gov/Atlanta. Please relay any information about observed severe weather to the National Weather Service. The current time is 11:44 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Here are the 11 p.m. weather observations from around the area. At Atlanta, it was cloudy. The temperature was 73 degrees, dew point 68 degrees, relative humidity 84%, wind south at 8 miles an hour, pressure was 29.93 inches and rising. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was mostly cloudy and 73, wind calm. At Marietta, it was mostly cloudy and 74, wind calm. At Mableton, it was mostly cloudy and 74, wind northeast at 3. At Peachtree City, it was mostly cloudy and 70, wind northwest at 3. At Lawrenceville, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind west at 3. At Cartersville, the temperature was 72, wind calm. At Kennesaw, it was mostly cloudy and 73, wind south at 3. At Hampton, with light rain, it was 70, wind southwest at 5. At Covington, with light rain, it was 73, wind calm. At Monroe, with light rain, the temperature was 73. Elsewhere around the region, at Athens, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind calm. At Gainesville, it was cloudy, 70, wind west at 5. At Columbus, it was cloudy and 75, wind west at 10. At Birmingham, it was partly cloudy and 72, wind north at 3. At Rome, it was partly cloudy and 69, wind north at 3. At Chattanooga, it was mostly cloudy and 68, wind calm. At Asheville, it was mostly cloudy and 65, wind northwest at 5. At Augusta, with light rain, it was 75, wind south at 13. At St. Simon's Island, it was partly cloudy and 81, wind south at 10 gusting to 18. Here is the official forecast from your...
To ramped up protests.
KCAL News reporter Danya Backus in downtown now with the long day of demonstrations.
Tension between protesters and law enforcement continued in Los Angeles for a fourth consecutive day after a weekend of at times violent clashes over immigration raids. Family members of those detained during the raids gathered Monday to express their outrage.
I was present during the raids. I saw with my own eyes the pains of the families, crying, screaming, not knowing what to do, just like me.
On Monday, California's Attorney General said he is suing the Trump administration for deploying hundreds of National Guard members over the weekend, a move he called unlawful.
They did so without authorization from Governor Newsom and against the wishes of local law enforcement who were on the ground actively assessing and responding to the situation in Los Angeles in real time, a situation that didn't warrant the National Guard.
In a social media post, California Governor Gavin Newsom also called reports of 700 Marines being mobilized to Los Angeles completely unwarranted, uncalled for, and unprecedented. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, has threatened to arrest anyone who obstructs the administration's immigration enforcement effort, including Newsom. In an interview Monday, Governor Newsom encouraged the administration to move forward with his arrest. President Trump had this to say in response.
Should he do it? I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great. Enough is enough! Enough is enough!
Protesters also gathered to protest ICE raids throughout the nation Monday, including in Philadelphia, Tampa, and Houston. Danya Backus, KCAL News.
And another live look at what's happening tonight. Looks like lots of police activity in this scene after these protests are being broken up tonight in both downtown LA and in Santa Ana.
I believe this is Tom Waite's camera, so that gives us an idea of where this is happening. Let's go to KCAL News assignment editor Mike Rogers at the desk. Mike, we see regular traffic blowing by, and also we saw some officers kind of in formation.
Yeah, which is the best news, and I believe those officers that are moving are probably in the demobilization portion of the night. I mean, we are getting simply don't need the amount of force that they've had down there throughout the course of the evening, which is certainly the best news that we have heard because it's just been such a bad, even really since Friday night, we've been dealing with really violent protests here as we look at Tom, and I think this might be City Hall. I see that bridge there.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, so that's great news. You know, they had made a really concerted effort to push all of the protesters away from the Civic Center, from downtown, from any of the federal buildings, the courthouse, City Hall, all of that. They ended up in the Arts District. They ended up in Little Tokyo for a little while. So certainly a different type of situation here as we're looking at these live pictures. I can also tell you we are waiting for the Marines to arrive. And I don't know who's in the control room, but if we can look at Sat 52 really quick, I just want to show that. We're sitting on the 10 freeway here waiting for these Marines to potentially arrive. We've seen a lot of social media video of them starting to leave the 29 Palms area, which begs the question, if local law enforcement is demobilizing because there's nobody there, flooding 700 Marines into the city is going to be an interesting kind of situation. We also don't know where they're going to go. You know, we had been talking about that earlier because we wanted to get some video of the Marines coming in here and figuring out where they are. So we had been trying to kind of talk amongst ourselves about where they're going to house these Marines because under normal circumstances, in the past when we've seen the National Guard here, they've been at the LA Convention Center, they've been at Rose Bowl, they've been in other city facilities, but because the federal government is not cooperating with the city, or at least not communicating with the city about their needs, it's very unlikely the city is going to be like, hey, come on over, this is where we want you. You know, there's a lawsuit to stop what's happening right now. So the feds will have to use their own properties to house them, and we don't know where that is.
And Mike, when you're talking about 700 troops, hard to miss if they're coming on the 10 freeway towards us, right?
And they're in big white school buses from what we've seen on social media.
Okay. Keep us updated, Mike. Thank you so much. All right, we want to get a check of our weather now. We're just getting Rivera standing by, and boy, we've had some ups and downs, haven't we?
Ups and downs, but a beautiful weekend, Danny. It really uplifted my mood coming into the work week. Right?
I know, right? To see the sunshine and the mild temperatures, you guys. It was lovely, and we're going to see more of that. A little bit of a warm up for some of our inland communities, so we are going to get you and your family prepared, and more June gloom. Crazy difference between our beaches and also our inland communities. 35 degrees, and that's all because of the marine layer. So we were at 68 degrees in Newport Beach. We had the marine layer clouds. Lancaster under bright sunshine from start to finish, 102 degrees there. And we're going to see much of the same going into the coming days. So more June gloom, hot temperatures inland, not so hot at the coast because of that June gloom and those clouds that are stubborn even into the afternoon. And then a cooler end of the week, still above average. And then another warm up this upcoming weekend for Father's Day. Look at this, Saturday, low 80s. And by Sunday in Los Angeles and Orange counties, we're talking mid-80s. So it is going to be toasty out there once we get to Father's Day on Sunday. Now let's talk about tomorrow. Beaches are going to be cooler, all because of this right here. We've got the marine layer clouds. They're rolling back in. 8 to 8:30, pushing into the San Fernando Valley. That green on your map, some sprinkles popping up. And then you see those clouds retreating, pulling away by 11 o'clock. We're under clear skies for most of us, but those clouds will continue to hug the beaches. So it is going to be cloudy for most of the day over there. Everyone else is going to be seeing plenty of sunshine and also warmer temperatures going into tomorrow. Here's a look at our lows first thing in the morning. Lower 60s out there. Not even dropping too cool for our high deserts, only down to the low 70s in Lancaster. Inland Empire will be sunny from start to finish. Low 60s by 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, low 70s, mid 80s by noon. And then boom, this is going to be one of those areas that feel warmer than today. Mid 90s once we get to the afternoon. Look at those triple digits out there. So 102 in Lancaster, 102 in Palmdale, 80s in Bourbon, low 80s. And we're going to keep those lower 80s going in Los Angeles and Orange counties through the end of the week. There's that warm up for Father's Day, mid 80s. In the valleys, one day in the 90s, and then we continue to drop the rest of the week just by a degree. So it's still going to be warm for the rest of the week. Warmer this weekend by Father's Day, 93. Valleys, mid 90s tomorrow. Mid 90s hold on Wednesday, still toasty. Lower 90s for Thursday, Friday. And then another warm up going into Father's Day weekend in the mid 90s. 90s for the deserts, 80s for the mountains, and lower 70s at the beaches. Susie and Juan.
Danny, thank you so much. Refusing to close her doors in the middle of a volatile protest.
How one local business owner helped protesters and the police policing them.
Coming up at the hour tonight on KCAL News at 9, we continue our live team coverage of these protests over ICE raids.
And will there be another truce made? The latest developments in trade talks between the U.S. and China. All that and more tonight on KCAL News at 9.
Give me 2 seconds. I want to see if they got this.
Here is the hazardous weather outlook. This hazardous weather outlook is for north and central Georgia. For this afternoon and tonight, scattered thunderstorms are expected in Georgia this evening into the early overnight hours. Some storms could be severe, with the primary hazard being damaging wind gusts in the 40 to 60 miles per hour range. And now the extended outlook for the period Tuesday through Sunday. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms will linger in parts of north and central Georgia between Tuesday and next weekend. A couple of stronger storms are possible, but confidence in the timing of any severe weather is low at this time. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation is not requested, but spotters are encouraged to submit reports of severe weather through the web by going to weather.gov/Atlanta. Please relay any information about observed severe weather to the National Weather Service. The current time is 11:55 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Here are the 11 p.m. weather observations from around the area. At Atlanta, it was cloudy. The temperature was 73 degrees, dew point degrees, relative humidity. Wind south at 8 miles an hour. Pressure was 29.93 inches and rising. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was mostly cloudy and 73, wind calm. At Marietta, it was mostly cloudy and 74, wind calm. At Mableton, it was mostly cloudy and 74, wind northeast at 3. At Peachtree City, it was mostly cloudy and 70, wind northwest at 3. At Lawrenceville, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind west at 3. At Cartersville, the temperature was 72, wind calm. At Kennesaw, it was mostly cloudy and 73, wind south at 3. At Hampton, with light rain, it was 70, wind southwest at 5. At Covington, with light rain, it was 73, wind calm. At Monroe, with light rain, the temperature was 73. Elsewhere around the region, at Athens, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind calm. At Gainesville, it was mostly cloudy and 70, wind west at 5. At Columbus, it was cloudy and 75, wind west at 10. At Birmingham, it was partly cloudy and 72, wind north at 3. At Rome, it was partly cloudy and 69, wind north at 3. At Chattanooga, it was mostly cloudy and 68, wind calm. At Asheville, it was mostly cloudy and 65, wind northwest at 5. At Augusta, with light rain, it was 75, wind south at 13. At St. Simon's Island, it was partly cloudy and 81, wind south at 10 gusting to 18. Here is the official forecast from your National Weather Service for the Atlanta listening area. Tonight, mostly cloudy. A chance of showers and thunderstorms this evening. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms after midnight. Patchy fog late. Lows in the upper 60s. Light southwest winds. Chance of rain 40%. Tuesday, mostly sunny. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Highs in the mid-80s. West winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tuesday night, mostly clear in the evening, then becoming partly cloudy. Lows in the mid-60s. Light west winds in the evening, becoming light and variable. Wednesday, sunny. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Highs in the upper 80s. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Chance of rain 20%. Wednesday night, a slight chance of thunderstorms in the evening. Partly cloudy with a slight chance of showers. Lows in the mid-60s. Light southeast winds. Chance of rain 20%. And now the extended forecast. Thursday and Thursday night, mostly cloudy. A chance of showers and thunderstorms. Highs in the upper 80s. Lows in the upper 60s. Friday and Friday night, showers and thunderstorms likely. Highs in the upper 80s. Lows around 70. Saturday through Sunday night, showers and thunderstorms likely. Highs in the upper 80s. Lows in the lower 70s. Monday and Monday night, showers likely and a chance of thunderstorms. Highs in the 80s. Lows in the lower 70s. For more detailed weather, water, and climate information, please visit.
A Compton restaurant became a safe haven as protests escalated over the weekend. Both demonstrators and law enforcement found refuge inside.
That's right. The owner tells Arena Nakano it wasn't about taking sides. It was
There were only so many times that police were going to tell people that they had to disperse, or get arrested. And when they didn't disperse, this is what happened. So now we've been watching as they've been taking people's information and then walking them over to that big white LAPD bus that I told you showed up about an hour ago. It's now parked across the street. After they get some information and register these people, they're walking them across the street and putting them into those buses. Over the last hour or so, the crowd that we had been following really started to thin out until it was maybe just, a couple dozen people, maybe 30, 40 people here at this intersection. And they really corralled them. They had them surrounded, and they continually were telling them, you have to get out of here. You have to go home. And some people just persisted. And so it turned into what it is now, which is where they're being taken into custody. So it should be a wrap from where we are in terms of the protest, because once they get this small number of people situated, then they should disperse. The law enforcement that's here should continue on their way. But we are hearing of pockets throughout the city elsewhere that continue to pop up. We'll be looking for that and trying to see where our next location should be in order to see what is continuing to happen here on the streets of LA. But you can see even here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 people lined up as I speak. I've already seen probably 10 or 12 already taken into the LAPD bus. So, they're not messing around anymore. They asked people, they told people that they had to get out of here. They didn't. And now that this is the consequence. every now and then we will hear some fireworks going off some blocks away. Those are people who did decide to walk away and are making their way away from this corner. But, you know, in a final perhaps act of defiance, just letting those fireworks go as they leave the neighborhoods.
You know what,
Guys,
Lori?
back to you.
Again, you were out there last night. This seems to be a little more calmer, even in terms of taking people into custody. Yes, if that's the word, and you know, just let the police officer, as opposing to resist like they did last night.
I think. Right, and I think that for some of these people, perhaps the act of being detained and being arrested is also an expression of their frustration and shows how much they are willing to do in order to make a point about what they feel about immigration enforcement here in Los Angeles. So, you know, perhaps that's why they are, as you said, acquiescing or cooperating, you know, without resisting at all, because they do see it as another act, if you will, of defiance in this. But yeah, this is happening peacefully and calmly so far. There has not been any resistance or fighting from what we've seen.
All right, thank you so much, Lori.
Hundreds more military troops are being deployed to Los Angeles tonight at the direction of the president.
This as the state is filing a lawsuit to get them out. And KCAL's Leslie Marin joins us now with more information. Leslie?
Yeah, Pat and Rudabeh, both the governor and the Pentagon confirming tonight that an additional 2,000 National Guard troops will be deployed to Los Angeles, on top of the 2,000 deployed over the weekend. Shortly before that announcement, the White House confirmed that 700 Marines will land in Los Angeles in the next 24 hours. Now, the governor claims many of the troops already here are sitting unused in federal buildings and called the move reckless and pointless. California Attorney Rob Bonta confirmed the troops are activated for 60 days, and right now state officials do not know when they will stand down. Now, the National Guard and the Marines' mission is to solely help protect federal personnel and federal property. The last time this National Guard and Marines were federalized and sent to LA was back in 1992 during the LA riots. Political experts I spoke to tonight telling me that was a very different situation at the time. The governor and mayor had both requested it. In the meantime, the governor now suing the Trump administration for deploying the National Guard without his consent. The state is asking a judge to declare it unconstitutional and for the court to halt any future deployments.
An order that abused the federal government's authority and violated the 10th Amendment and federal law. An order that skipped over multiple rational, common sense, strategic steps that should have been deployed to quell unrest and prevent escalation. I, in partnership with Governor Gavin Newsom, are suing President Trump.
He's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order.
Well, Trump went on to say today that had he not sent into Guard, LA would have been, quote, completely obliterated. A lot of local and federal officials pushing back against that idea. The National Guard, we have not really seen leave federal property. Many of the clashes happening on city streets that we're watching tonight, yesterday, the day before, are with local law enforcement and protesters. To help them out, the local law enforcement, the governor announcing today that he is adding an additional 800 state and local law enforcement to help out here in Los Angeles. Pat.
All right, thanks so much, Leslie. Now, earlier tonight, LA Mayor Karen Bass spoke out about the protest that started as a rally for the release of SEIU President David Huerta. She says the ICE raids in the city and surrounding areas are causing fear in the community.
We were told that raids would be to look for violent criminals, people who had warrants, but I don't know how you go from a drug dealer to a Home Depot. And it makes me feel like our city is actually a test case for what happens when the federal government moves in and takes the authority away from the state or away from local government.
Now, Mayor Bass says descriptions of the city are being exaggerated and most protesters are peaceful. She says the small amount of people causing destruction will be held accountable.
LA Unified Superintendent Alberto Carvalho is reassuring parents and students that graduations will happen as the raids and protests continue.
We are one. At Los Angeles Unified, we have a commitment to protect the rights, the opportunities for every single child, every one of our workforce members, and the families we serve. No questions asked.
Carvalho, earlier today, were vans parked within a couple of blocks of 2 LA schools, which he calls an intimidation tactic. He stressed that all graduation ceremonies happening this week will be protected by administrators and school police, who will set up perimeters around the events. They'll also provide a protected path for parents and students to and from the ceremonies. Tomorrow is the last day of school in the district. Our coverage of the protests continues with Mike Rogers on the desk.
And Mike, you have new information on a very dangerous situation that unfolded live on our air last night.
Yeah, a very dangerous situation that our Lori Perez found herself very, very close to when a minivan driver, who is now in custody, by the way, really started driving incredibly erratically and got very, very close to Lori. I want to show you the moments when we were on the air when this happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is, woo! Look out, look out, look out, look out, look out, look out. Yes, he just came right at us. Just came right at us.
So there was that minivan. This is how it started. This minivan, we found him doing donuts in the middle of the street, protesters throwing all kinds of objects at this minivan driver. Then all of a sudden, he started throwing things out of the car. And then as he continued to drive, watch this really just wild and unnecessarily erratic doing in this car. Then he gets into the area near Union Station, or comes into a pedestrian area here. You can see him kind of threading the needle between the 2 blockades going through this pedestrian area. He gets out. He starts pushing around a trash can for reasons we don't know why. And then he continues, and right there, look at that. He barely missed clipping a bicyclist, but alerted the bicyclist enough. The bicyclist actually fell. So here we are, first in Savannah. He gets out of the van, goes into this other car. Sheriff's deputies from East LA Station are able to get there and take him into custody. I just got off the phone with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's detective that is handling this case. He says they took that person into custody for assault with a deadly weapon, which would be the vehicle. They also found a gun in the car. The detective tells me that thanks to our coverage, they were able to learn that that suspect was moving between not only the van, but that white car that you saw next to it. And the white car is where I am told they found that gun. Now, because of the gun being found and the fact that he is a previously convicted felon, according to the Sheriff's Department, they were also able to arrest him on felon in possession of a firearm. He is also now being held on a probation hold. The Sheriff's Department tells me that they are in the process of potentially trying to seek out more victims of this person. We had seen last night on social media that this was potentially the second night that this person had been doing this. We still have no idea what his potential motivation was to be driving that way. Clearly, it would appear from the video you saw that, from Lori's camera there, that he was driving directly towards the crowd, slamming on the brakes at the last second. You could hear the screech. You heard Lori's reaction. We saw the crowd reacting to him as well. So a really bizarre situation that unfolded last night. That driver now in custody with the East Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. They are trying to investigate, figure out why he did this, and potentially seek out more victims.
Mike, quite a different scene tonight versus last night, huh?
Very much a different scene, and I can tell you, I'm listening to my colleagues, and actually, if we can take SkyCal live for a second, we finally found a crowd. Last night, there was no difficulty in finding a crowd. Tonight, we have been kind of searching different parts of the city, and I know they've been talking about it. John, if you can tell me in my ear where you guys are at. So this is live, and I believe he's on 3rd Street near 3rd and Central. I think this is close to the area where this is. This is really all that remains of the crowd tonight. Last night, though, I mean, there were so many situations. We couldn't be in all of the places at once where they were. Law enforcement couldn't be in all the places. There were fires. We saw trash cans being set on fires. Obviously, the Waymos were on fire. Quite the different situation tonight than from what we saw last night, guys.
We saw CHP vehicles on fire. That was, well, at least one in particular. That was pretty incredible. People from the overpass, right?
Right, yeah. So the protesters, which was weird, and we asked CHP about this and didn't get a super clear answer as to why, but you saw it today. We saw it on Friday, Pat. Remember, they blocked the on-ramps of the freeway.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they didn't do that yesterday.
Is that how they got on the freeway?
Yeah,
because
they just
did
walked.
Not?
Yeah, the on-ramps were open, and they walked down onto the freeway. There was a lot of them, and not only were they on the freeway, but then you had crowds on the overpass and on both sides of the freeway, with the high ground on law enforcement. So then CHP comes in, they move all the protesters off the freeway, and then those protesters that were above them start chipping away at whatever they could find. We had found some social media video Dean did of them using hammers to break away some of the concrete to then throw onto the CHP cars. What you were talking about the CHP car that was set on fire or attempted to, They used what looked like some straw or other type of kindling, mixed it with some cardboard, set it on fire, threw it onto the car, and then somebody poured some liquid on top of that as an accelerant that really set it off. Thankfully, though, CHP had a fire extinguisher that they kind of couldn't get all the way out there because every time they would poke their heads out, somebody would throw concrete at them or rocks. So then they, from where they could, tried to use some, dry chem fire extinguisher, and they were able to put the fire out before the car, became engulfed.
Look at all those police cars up, at least it looks like 2 city blocks as far as I can see, and it just keeps going and going and going. It looks to me like almost as many police officers as protesters right now in that area.
Yeah, for sure, and this is a mix. Those lights look like CHP for the most part that are down there. And then as we get closer, I think that starts where we get LAP. Yeah, and sheriffs, John's telling me as well. Wow. So you got sheriffs and CHP down there, but there is a lot of law enforcement. They have certainly had the upper hand in the numbers game tonight as compared to last night. And look at that, John, that car, that middle car, that's Ventura County Sheriff. That's up there. I can tell by the markings on the side there. That's not even an LA County Sheriff. That's Ventura County that is now down here. And that goes, Pat, what we were talking about earlier, the mutual aid.
Absolutely. They got that in place. Once they assessed what happened last night, we heard from Mayor Bass today and Police Chief Jim McDonnell, and they said they were going to have mutual aid. Governor Newsom said he was calling in other municipalities from all over, actually, to assist. And you talk about a show of force there. I mean, talk about your backup, right? Yeah. I mean, I got your back. Yes, they do, as far as we can see.
Yeah, John's telling me, John's a photographer in SkyCal, 3 city blocks worth of law enforcement that have filled this area, and there will be no match for the protesters, which is the stark difference between last night and tonight. Lots of early decisions by law enforcement tonight to move the protesters into certain areas, and a lot more law enforcement that are here.
Yeah, I think Mayor Bass said Chief McDonnell said 14 other agencies assisting, and that's who the LAPD usually calls, then the sheriff calls the governor, and the governor calls the National Guard typically. So this is very unusual. Have we seen the National Guard at all today?
Not besides the steps of the federal building. I mean, they've not, and that was what the big criticism has been by, Mayor Bass, and especially at the press conference today. At the press conference tonight, she said they're protecting 2 buildings, but they are not in the streets dealing with the protesters. And then, as we've been reporting, and I keep checking our camera over here to see if I see them yet, but there is supposed to be an influx of 700 Marines that are coming in too. And Mayor Bass said to do what? We don't know. And again, we've talked about this earlier. Are they going to just be there to protect the federal buildings? Are they going to go assist on more immigration enforcement? We don't know that. There has been a lot of social media video, though, of them leaving 29 Palms and on the way to LA.
I just want to add this, Mike, as we're talking about the show of force with law enforcement, their first premise, they invite peaceful protest. Yes. Let's just say that. They do welcome people practicing their First Amendment rights. What they are not against is what we saw last night, is that the events that you described, with fires being set, personal property being destroyed, and even the families that were gathered outside the Metropolitan Detention Center today who had loved ones who were taken into detention, they didn't want to see violence either. So there's there. And just when you were talking about what happened with the CHP, some of those items, if you call them that people had, that's not, you go to protest, you have your sign or what have you, but that sounds like people who have done other things before, or organized enough to let's take it up, let's ratchet it up a heck of a notch.
And what really painted that picture is when I saw a leaf blower last night. Right. And I said, what is the leaf blower for? To blow the tear gas away. And when you think about that, that's when you really get the idea, like, okay, these guys have done this before, they know the tools. That's what the chief said yesterday as well. So this is a different group tonight. This is not a group this is a group that is back to what our elected leaders have asked for, which is calm. There certainly have been pockets of violence or unruliness, but large in a way, the groups tonight have been calm.
Okay, Mike, thank you. And we are also seeing protests tonight in Santa Ana.
So let's check in with KCAL News reporter Nicole Comstock, who is near that area. So, Nicole, what are you seeing now?
Well, Pat, same thing here in Santa Ana. There have been protests going on out here for hours now near the federal building, where you can see lots of National Guard members have gathered here right in front Obviously, they've been ordered in from President Trump to protect these buildings, to keep law and order out here, and to sort of just calm everything going on with the protests happening all weekend here in Southern California. And they've kind of taken over this intersection here at Santa Ana and Parton Street with their fleet of Humvees. So this is kind of the line where they've shut it down to keep any protesters from filing back into this area where the federal building is. Behind them, we have a row of Santa Ana police officers, and right on the other side of that are the protesters. We can tell you that they are still loud out here. They're making a lot of noise with some of those big fireworks, but the crowd is dwindling out here significantly. So we'll show you a shot of some video we took a couple of hours ago out here when it was lighter out. We had one guy out here taunting federal agents. I'm not sure if you have this video up yet, but he's the guy in the yellow shirt who will appear here. The federal agents weren't having any of it. They eventually caught up to him out here and detained him, likely arrested him. There always seems to be at the protests, a lot of people who are coming out here trying to defend their families, standing up for what they think is right. And then there are a small percentage of people who are doing way more than other people are. And it seemed to be the case with that situation there. Pepper balls being used out here throughout the evening to disperse the crowd at times as well. Actually, one of our photographers.
Did you know QuickBooks users find an average of $6,000 in tax savings? Snap and categorize your receipts. Get
you're going to be feeling everything that the protesters are as well. This is obviously a community here in Santa Ana with a lot of immigrant families who say they just want to stand up for what they believe is right and they want to keep their families together. And the Santa Ana City Council actually just voted last month to move forward with a program that would essentially create an alert system to notify residents before any federal immigration sweeps. We don't know if all the people at the protests know about that, if they're hoping that that would have kicked in at this point. I think it's a little bit too early in the system at this point. But Santa Ana is Orange County's only sanctuary city. So a lot of people wondering, hey, if we're a sanctuary city, if we're making a big statement like that, why are these sweeps still taking place here? Well, Santa Ana PD says they don't work with federal agents on immigration enforcement operations, but police departments also can't use their resources to interfere with these investigations either. So that puts our local authorities in a really tricky position where, obviously I'm sure many of them can understand what these families are going through. They see why they're upset, but at the same time, they have to do their jobs out here and they can't get in the way when we have the National Guard out here, when eventually if Marines get to these towns as well, they kind of have to let them do what they're going to do. Huntington Park, we saw a different situation with police officers when we were out there at a news conference earlier today with mayors talking about these raids. Some police officers finding a way to quietly support people in their community, driving by these protests, giving them a thumbs up. Not necessarily the situation out here because it seems like the crowd was a little bit more unruly during the day. But for now, the National Guard holding down the fort out here along with Santa Ana police officers. And the crowd, for the most part out here, we've seen a little bit of vandalism, some graffiti on buildings, and then lots of fireworks being lit off tonight. But we're not seeing much else at this point, you guys. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
We can hear the chopper overhead, Nicole. And we heard earlier that was was it an Army helicopter? Do you know that to be the case now?
Yeah, we're not really sure. It's pretty dark out here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It looks like a news helicopter. It looked like it was white on the front, but we were definitely seeing more police officers, about a couple dozen of them that ran down the street just about a half an hour ago. And it seems like either more National Guard are coming in or they're just all getting positioned in this location. But we're not short on law enforcement out here tonight, as you can tell.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Nicole. Okay, let's turn our attention to the weather department.
Yeah.
Another nice day.
But it sounds like we're going to still deal with a little June gloom, huh?
Yeah, a little bit of the June gloom, but it's going to clear away pretty quickly, girls, and we're going to get the sunshine. It's going to be beautiful. Okay, but a crazy difference, you guys, between our
Relative humidity 87%, wind southwest at 5 miles an hour. Pressure was 29.93 inches and steady. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was cloudy and 72, wind south at 6. At Marietta, it was cloudy and 73, wind south at 3. At Mableton, it was cloudy and 73, wind south at 5. At Peachtree City, it was cloudy and 69, wind calm. At Lawrenceville, it was mostly cloudy and 72, wind calm. At Cartersville, the temperature was 70.
Spotting at this hour from our helicopter. You can see people assembled there in the intersection and about 3 blocks worth of law enforcement vehicles. You see law enforcement officers holding the line there.
And I'm not sure if this is the same area where the buses were pulled in to arrest protesters tonight. They had their zip ties, and when we spoke with our Lori Perez just a couple of minutes ago, we saw at least a dozen or so demonstrators being taken into custody. They went willingly, and we believe that that's possibly their plan, as that is their way to still demonstrate. We'll be back with more news after this break.
We prepare you for the entire day. We look at
64, wind south at 3. At Augusta, with rain and fog, it was 70, wind south at 6. At St. Simon's Island, it was partly cloudy and 81, wind south at 9. Here is the official forecast from your National Weather Service for the Atlanta listening area. Tonight, mostly cloudy. A chance of showers and thunderstorms this evening. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms after midnight. Patchy fog late. Lows in the upper 60s. Light southwest winds. Chance of rain 40%. Tuesday, mostly sunny. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Highs in the mid-80s. West winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tuesday night, mostly clear in the evening, then becoming partly cloudy. Lows in the mid-60s. Light west winds in the evening, becoming light and variable. Wednesday, sunny. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Highs in the upper 80s. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Chance of rain 20%. Wednesday night, a slight chance of thunderstorms in the evening. Partly cloudy with a slight chance of showers. Lows in the mid-60s. Light southeast winds. Chance of rain 20%. And now the extended forecast. Thursday and Thursday night, mostly cloudy. A chance of showers and thunderstorms. Highs in the upper 80s. Lows in the upper 60s. Friday and Friday night, showers and thunderstorms likely. Highs in the upper 80s. Lows around 70. Saturday through Sunday night, showers and thunderstorms likely. Highs in the upper 80s. Lows in the lower 70s. Monday and Monday night, showers likely and a chance of thunderstorms. Highs in the mid-80s. Lows in the lower 70s. For more detailed weather, water, and climate information, please visit our website at weather.gov/Atlanta. Here is the hazardous weather outlook. This hazardous weather outlook is for north and central Georgia. For this afternoon and tonight, scattered thunderstorms are expected in Georgia this evening into the early overnight hours. Some storms could be severe, with the primary hazard being damaging wind gusts in the 40 to 60 miles per hour range. And now the extended outlook for the period Tuesday through Sunday. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms will linger in parts of north and central Georgia between Tuesday and next weekend. A couple of stronger storms are possible, but confidence in the timing of any severe weather is low at this time. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation is not requested, but spotters are encouraged to submit reports of severe weather through the web by going to weather.gov/Atlanta. Please relay any information about observed severe weather to the National Weather Service. The current time is 12:26 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Here are the midnight weather observations from around the area. At Atlanta, it was cloudy. The temperature was 72 degrees, dew point 68 degrees, relative humidity 87%, wind southwest at 5 miles an hour, pressure was 29.93 inches and steady. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was cloudy and 72, wind south at 6. At Marietta, it was cloudy and 73.
Are still on the streets. waving flags, carrying signs, and a show of force behind them, as you mentioned, Ruta Bay, LAPD, and a number of municipalities. Ventura County, we saw in that line of at least 3 blocks, it looks like, of law enforcement there to provide support.
Yeah, they made some arrests. We had reporters on the ground talking about that. They made some arrests. They appeared to be peaceful as far as we could see there on the ground tonight. And it appears to be calm right now, at least in this area that we're seeing. And a far, far different picture from last night. This is now day 4 of these protests. And it does appear calm at this hour, at least from this vantage point.
Yeah, certainly not the chaotic scene that we had last night with 5 Waymo vehicles on fire, try to set a CHP vehicle on fire, and sporadic fires all over the place in downtown Los Angeles, spread out in different areas, which was, you know, very difficult. Okay, somebody just looked like a smoke bomb or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was looking like to me. I didn't see it come from, I gotta go back and look. I didn't see it come from law enforcement, so I don't know if somebody in the crowd had it and is throwing that around.
There have been fireworks, too. We've been seeing that.
Else.
Oh, it's a fire extinguisher.
Okay, well, you know what? Our Tom Wade is in downtown Los Angeles. We're going to go to him now, and Tom may be able to give us some information about what we're looking at here. Hi, Tom.
Hi there, Pat. Yeah, we just walked up on the scene right now. We're at 2nd and San Pedro. I think you were just looking at our aerial shots from here. Yeah, can you? Yeah. Also, we're on the ground here, and sorry, there's just a lot going on here. This is the highest concentration of people that we've seen, and it definitely has a more volatile feeling here in this area. And police do have the area locked down pretty closely here. But it certainly has tension. Sorry, I'm trying to stay away from people yelling profanity. Yeah, there's definitely this is definitely the highest concentration of people that we've seen since the crowd dispersed, was broken up from the area around City Hall. Now it sounds like there's almost like a street takeover kind of. It looks, I can't see from my vantage point, but it sounds like someone may be doing burnouts just a few feet away. I can hear them making an announcement right now. Police, I believe, are ordering the crowd to disperse. So I'm trying to get a sense of where that's happening, which is, I believe, right down the street. You're looking at the vantage point there. This is Little Tokyo. Someone just flew a drone over the crowd, and that is going to really upset police because they do have their choppers up and they're pretty low. I can, that was a firework that just went off. I see projectiles being thrown. I can't really see directly into where the officers are, but you can see the fireworks going off, and people are standing on their cars waving flags. I see a number of Mexican flags being waved in as people are standing on top of their cars. You know, it's hard to know at this point who is here to protest in favor of immigration and immigrant rights and who is here just as an agitator. It's very difficult to discern that right now. It's very chaotic, very volatile. There's just so much, it's like a tinderbox, it feels like, you know, when there's just so many things going on. One person does one thing, the crowd can surge, the crowd can move. It's a very fluid and difficult situation to be certain. Now someone's firing off fireworks into the crowd. That is being fired from someone's pickup truck. I can see them, they're shooting it. They have like a launcher. They have a launcher. Do you see that, Anna?
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
This is so insane. Yeah,
Well, you know what, Tom? I'm just going to say this. Maybe they can't see that line of law enforcement, you know, that's behind LAPD there. There's almost a 3-block long.
Maybe, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if they're going to move in.
The thing is, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't see how they can let this go on much longer the way this is going. This is too tense. I mean, there's just too much right now that could happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we just see you know, there could be officers that are lined up somewhere to rush in. Oftentimes, I mean, obviously you've got the chopper view, so I can't see everything around us. But oftentimes, officers are in places we don't know where they are, and they just come blasting in a column, and will just disperse the crowd, break it up very quickly. Certainly, this has to be an area of concern, because we've just been driving around. We have not really seen much else going on.
And Tom, we're seeing these cars on the ground. Are these just random people who are trying to drive through downtown and maybe don't know what's going on? Are they protesters? Can you tell who's in these cars around you right now?
I mean, that's, you know, Rudabeh, that's really the question I have, because it's hard to get a sense of who is here you know, protesting, and who's here just kind of for a street takeover. It's just difficult to know. I mean, I think there are definitely people who are activists that are mixed in here, but sometimes you lose a sense of really. There's no organization that I can see. There's no sort of leader. There's no one. You know, Pat asked a great question earlier about sort of the George Floyd marches and protests and rallies that we saw, you know, back in 2020, and there were much clearer sort of organizations and leaders and people kind of guiding, and you know, obviously the outset of those were very violent, but the you know, first couple of days, but then things for the weeks that followed were very organized. They were very methodical. There were marches. That doesn't, in this case, it just doesn't seem like that. That doesn't mean it's not as legitimate or anything like that. It just means that it doesn't have that feel. It has more of a chaotic feel to it. You know, I'm looking over there in the distance there. The police do seem to have a pretty strong, you know, presence just ahead of us, up above San Pedro, but I can't tell, and obviously you guys can see from the chopper kind of better vantage point there of what they may be doing, or, you know, if additional personnel is headed this way.
Well, it's a massive show of force, and right now, what we're seeing some officers get out of their vehicles. I hadn't seen this before until now. There is a line of that are right there at the front, and they haven't moved. It appears that they're trying to make sure that people don't get past them where they are. And when we bring Mike back in here, he can probably give us an exact location of where they are right now from the picture we're looking at here. So, Tom, they haven't moved, but again, they may be trying to keep them from going past them. But certainly, if they need to come out and get through the crowd, there's enough of them to do it.
Yeah, and Pat, you know, one man just walked up to us and said, "Is this a block party?" So that's, you know, sort of to the point that we were making before, which is that, you know, it's kind of hard to know who's here to protest and who's just kind of here. Yeah, I mean, we're just in that holding pattern right now where it just feels like something's going to happen, whether that means the police are going to move in, or whether, you know, we've seen some fireworks being shot off. We've seen people who are just kind of waiting to kind of see what happens next. We're just trying to get a sense of, you know, where that goes.
All right, so you're at San Pedro and East 2nd Street. That's what we're looking at. That's where officers are. You know, what we were talking to Mike, he was describing what happened last night, where we saw quite a bit of vandalism at a number of businesses, at least 3 that were broken into, which is, you know, Tom, when we were talking about the differences in protests and the organization, you know, what we did see, unfortunately, in 2020 is a lot of people just taking the situation into their own hands, even spreading out. Remember going to Santa Monica, Melrose, and breaking into stores and using that as an opportunity to vandalize.
There was a lot of looting in 2020, and I remember in the days, you know, we'd have the really bad violence at night. The next morning, the business owners would gather. They'd be upset, understandably. So we had the 3, you know, yesterday, the 2 shoe stores and the T-Mobile store that all got looted pretty badly. Now, where Tom is at 2nd and San Pedro. That line of police officers, which is, by the way, I want to point out, mostly out-of-town law enforcement. It's mostly Ventura County sheriffs that are there. and some CHP officers. They are all lined up on 2nd Street going to the north. So they are occupying basically from 2nd Street through Los Angeles up until Main and almost Spring Street. There's about 3 blocks worth of law enforcement that are there. And they're, like I said, as you see somebody climbing a traffic signal here with the San Pedro marker on it to hang that flag. There's something that happened. There's something that just so very quickly switched with this group. I mean, we had been seeing, you know, mostly calm, mostly peaceful, and then all of a sudden something happened, and a couple of people, I don't know if it's a couple of people or most of the group, but somebody got in here, and all of a sudden there were fireworks, there was smoke, there was things escalating very quickly compared to what it had been even, you know, half an hour ago.
I will say, though, that law enforcement is holding the line. They did appear, those in the front appeared very calm. It looks like now they're moving in a little bit, and the crowd is dispersing, and they're taking projectiles from the crowd. They have their shields up, some of them, and taking some of that. Is there any idea why specifically they staged on this street, Mike?
I can't tell if it's just because tactically that was the smartest thing for them to do. There's nobody that can come into them from the sides. And I think, you know, Tom's seeing that as well.
As you can see there, they are in formation. Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, I was sorry. I thought Mike was asking me. Yeah, the crowd just surged forward. Oh, you're fine. The crowd just surged forward, and obviously you guys probably have a better vantage point. I'm up a little bit higher now on a stair, kind of at this. It's a bank on the corner, and I kind of see a little bit better now. But I can see now it's going to get worse. They're firing things into the police line. Yeah, they were the fireworks. Yeah, I mean now this is just going to get ugly. You know, the police are not going to allow that to continue. At this point, they might be starting to spread pepper bombs. I think, guys, I'm going to have to move. I don't know what's going to happen next year, and they may be beginning to spray pepper bombs or you know, I don't want to get hit. So we're going to have to duck away.
Okay, go ahead, Tom. Yeah, we can see. No wonder they were moving closer in formation to what is happening. Does that give you some indication, Mike, that they're going to call an order pretty soon to move in? Yeah,
for sure. And let me look and see really quickly if they've done that already. LAPD's been really good about tweeting this, though I don't see LAPD down there. This is CHP primarily in the front there in the darker uniforms, and then you've got Ventura County Sheriff behind it. You see somebody moving in with fire extinguishers or in a cone. The CHP's throwing some of that smoke. We saw that last night. CHP's got both. We've seen them throw just smoke, and we've also seen them throw tear gas. There was a moment there while Tom was talking, I don't know if you guys saw it, but those CHP officers and the sheriff's deputies all reached down and put on their gas masks. So they are equipped with gas masks because we see this really large canister, I think that's smoke that they've thrown out there. This is what CHP kind of threw yesterday. There's a drone right there as well, which I'm sure is not from law enforcement. And so they'll have to deal with this. Obviously, it's difficult for them to see through the smoke, but this is why they came with 3 city blocks of cops to be able to facilitate what they need to do here. They've kind of stopped that smoke. I don't know if it was smoke or tear gas, but it definitely helped create distance between the officers and the deputies and the crowd there. And then, you know, they'll have... Once they get out of this, you know, little corridor here on 2nd Street, if they push further,
like that boom it's very loud. I mean, it is like an explosion. It sounds like. I mean, it's like a firecracker that's like going off in your ear. It's so loud. And it's really surreal, honestly, looking at the way this is playing out. And I'm sure, you know, that the police can't let this go on much longer, right?
Well, it's interesting. We noticed which we saw happen last night too, when they would throw the tear gas, the canisters, and officers would try to kick it back at them like a soccer play.
Say bad game of soccer, yeah.
Yeah. So now it's you know, pretty incredible. I ask you this question, Mike. You know, we know these are primarily Ventura County police or police from other jurisdictions. So LAPD. You can see the PDs. They observing all of this, and maybe they'll make something. You know, they surround, create a perimeter.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look.
We have enough of them.
CHP's got a fixed-wing aircraft above, so they at least have eyes on it that way. You know, certainly, if we're in a mutual aid situation, Ventura County Sheriff, CHP, absolutely could call an unlawful assembly. Now, they just don't, you know, LAPD is kind enough to tweet it for us, so we can keep an eye on when that happens. But these officers certainly could be able to do that. Everybody you see in the black is CHP. That's primarily their special response team, mixed in with other officers as well. And then behind them, and it looks like those guys are a little bit further back now, but behind them, that's where we saw the Ventura County, yeah, right there, that second line, is the Ventura County Sheriff's deputies. So you've got that front line, and the reason that CHP is probably in front is because they appear to be a little bit more prepared for the situation. They're in a bit more tactical gear there, as you see. And then we'll have this situation here where now you've got this big gap between the protesters and the officers, and then eventually the protesters will start.
The sizzling summer sale is on at Gibson McDonald Furniture. Get a great night's sleep with queen mattresses starting at $1.
Protesters came, picked something up, had his or her hands in the air, and then was hit by something coming from the other direction just now.
Yeah, there should be an officer, I think, on the right side of the screen that's got a launcher that they were launching. This is what we saw them do last night, too. That is launching the tear gas canisters over into the crowd. And they have some good distance on those things, too. They were able to shoot them pretty far to get them into the crowd. And you saw it right there. So that guy, see him moving around with the black? Yeah, so that's one of the tear gas launchers.
Right here.
And it was very effective on the crowd. And John, if you can go back over to the crowd, I want to see how far back they went. Because that's what we saw yesterday, too, on the freeway. It doesn't feel good. And so this will really weed out the people who are like, okay, it's time to go home, and the other people who are here to, you know, cause problems. And as you see the crowd start to move, I believe that is down Alameda, John? I'm sorry, I keep saying Alameda, San Pedro. So they're now moving kind of in a southwesterly direction down South San Pedro.
There is no way, I'm asking a question, are they concerned about the exits? Do they have them blocked off, or do they feel they don't need to do that?
I think at this point, we're pretty far, and they're moving in the opposite direction of the freeway.
Okay.
So I don't think that we're in a situation, unless they were to, you know, circle back and go back to the north, we're moving away from the freeway pretty significantly away. So I think we're okay on the freeway right now.
And, you know, they also have to think about the buildings above them. There are a lot of tall buildings, rooftops all around them that they also have to, you know, keep an eye on from all directions. And they were really holding their line, exercising a lot of restraint. And then you saw from the crowd projectiles, fireworks. At one point, there were little fires started in that police line. And that's when they really started responding.
It really is. And, you know, I was even having a conversation with our executive producer about the temperature of this crowd. And when we had talked, it was like, yes, the protesters are there, the cops are there, but things seemed to be okay. And then all of a sudden it wasn't.
Okay, let's go back to our Tom Wade. He's back online with us. Tom, are you still hearing loud bangs and... Yeah, you are.
Oh yeah, I mean it's nonstop, right, Pat? It's going nonstop, and I can tell you though, it looks like but now they're like firing into the walls. It looks like. I mean, I don't even know where they're aiming these things, but it looks like a lot of the people in the crowd have dropped back, and it looks like some were hit by tear gas because they're trying to clear their eyes. But yeah, they're still firing these fireworks into. One of them looked like it was shot into a building, but they do look like they're being fired at police. But as you probably have that better vantage point, whether or not I can't tell if they're coming from the police or from the CHP.
Yeah, those are from CHP.
But yeah,
Tom.
people are dropping back. Oh, they are. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's what I thought. The other ones, I could kind of tell when you were saying that it was coming from CHP. It's a different sound, and I could see there one of our other news stations. Their truck was trapped in the crowd. They're trying to get out. You know, obviously this is so volatile. Thankfully we were parked a little bit further away, and I'm sure they're just relieved to get out of there. But yeah, you can see now, or I can even see now from this vantage point, it looks like they've really cleared out a lot of the people. But there are still, you know, a scattered bunch of crowd, and I can tell they're about to surge again. They're moving back toward us, and then they kind of charge back toward the opposite. And I don't know if they're like making a barricade. It sounded like they knocked something over. Yeah, oh wow. Okay, they're all surging toward, and perhaps like a car, I think. Oh my gosh, this is nuts. Okay, so they're all, you might be able to see they're like behind a car right now. Now everyone's running. Oop, now everyone's running. All right, everyone's
Oh,
running.
that's a trash can. Are there
Oh, it's a
people pushing the
dumpster.
trash
Yeah, they
cans?
gave it one good
I
push
see it.
and go right into the officers.
Oh, the one guy stopped it.
Yeah.
All right, so
Alright.
that was just being annoying, if you will.
Right.
Right. Thank goodness there was nothing in the dumpster.
And now you've got the crowd that has splintered. Some of them went down San Pedro, some of them are down on 2nd Street, which is good because it makes the crowd smaller, but at the same time it makes it kind of harder for law enforcement to figure out which way they want to go. So we'll probably see law enforcement stay at this intersection until they can figure out how they want to push or if they'll split and push both ways. We'll have to see how they handle it, but they've had to kind of spread out now because of the distance and the wide area now that they're sitting in here at the intersection.
And thank goodness we don't see stores being vandalized.
Yeah.
And last night they were at, was it an AM PM or a gas station?
Yes, like a Chevron or something, I think.
Downtown?
Yeah, and that's when, and I think that's where Lori was. That's where the van thing happened.
Mhm.
And as soon as they got there, all the lights at the gas station turned off, and that business was like, no, thank you, we don't want any of
you can
this.
smell the pepper spray.
And then they kind of, stayed there for a while. They lit 2 trash cans on fire there. They didn't really do any damage to it, but they hung out there for a pretty decent amount of time.
Well, I'm sure law enforcement is stationed in various locations. We're seeing a majority of them now, as you mentioned, though, but they aren't LAPD. So obviously, pardon me, LAPD is at different locations that we're not necessarily focused on right now.
Right.
Which is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's the design of mutual aid, is that last night what was happening is these guys would move, and so we had a pocket that was almost in, Chinatown, and then all of a sudden they popped up near LA Live, which geographically is the total opposite end of downtown, and it made it difficult for LAPD to hurry up and get over there.
Okay, they're doing something. They're moving in.
Yeah, they've got those pepper balls trained on the remainder of the crowd that went down San Pedro here, and there you see. So that is CHP. I know they look like fireworks sometimes, but that's CHP shooting more tear gas to keep the crowd moving.
Well, they seem to be moving.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it seems to be working, and let's see, they seem definitely more at the ready now, and an increased number as far as the line. They're 2 or 3 deep in some instances, and they have been taking a lot of projectiles, fireworks. At one point there was a small fire started where they were, now a dumpster that they had to fend off. So they are, they've been on defense for a while now, and then they went on offense and dispersed the crowd.
I haven't heard about any more arrests doing that, if they're still taking people into custody. I know that was a rather different location where they had those buses.
Yeah, I actually think, John, can you show that to us? John's in a spot, Sky Cal is who I'm referring to when I talk about John. He's in a spot where he can usually see both. So, John, I don't know if you can go back to Alameda and see if they're still facilitating those arrests over there. It's just, I think Sky Cal's almost like right on top of it. So he'll pan over and we should be able to see where that location was. Yeah, it was right here. And it looks like they're just about done with that. I mean, they're probably still processing people. You still have the bus there. But I don't necessarily see any more protesters in this location.
But look how many vehicles are there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe a couple.
It's a big law enforcement presence
Yeah.
for sure, and you can see a lot of the officers moving in right now across that intersection. So there must be something going on, some sort of information they have. They're forming a line at one of the crosswalks and then moving
Really?
across the
So
street.
this corner and that
Yeah.
corner. And they've got this one lined up as well.
And this is all LAPD right here.
Yeah.
So clearly they coordinated this with multiple agencies, and this is a coordinated approach now. I'm sure they knew to expect something like this given the events of the past few days.
Right. Yeah, and this situation looks like, pretty wrapped up at this point. I mean, there was those people that we saw with Lori that were being taken into custody. By the way, a CNN reporter was detained at that location as well, and detained, put in handcuffs briefly, and then escorted out of the area. It doesn't sound like they ever processed him or took him, but I was looking at our, we're a CNN affiliate technically, so I was looking at some of the video they were putting up on the server of that interaction happening. CNN crew it says they were removed by police from a protest zone in downtown, but this reporter was, had his hands behind his back, and the security guard that they were with, and they were escorted out with their hands behind their back. from that location.
I wonder if that's because they didn't disperse when they asked them to.
Yeah, we're not exempt from that. We work with our local law enforcement about where we're supposed to be, where it's safe for us. Certainly, we have a constitutional right to do what we're doing, but to an extent. And we go to trainings with law enforcement to be able to know where we're okay to be in certain situations.
And if they say move, you move.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to Tom Waite. Tom, have you changed your position?
I just moved back a little to avoid being pepper bombed or pepper sprayed. But I'm like right in that same intersection that we've been talking about. I mean, we're just, just a little back from it at 2nd and San Pedro. So the crowd is dispersed, as I'm sure you can probably see a bit, but there's still a lot of people that are still here. It's just more scattered, and we're still hearing these huge booms, and I don't know where those are coming from, if those are from the CHP or the officers or from the people here in the street. But yeah, there's people lingering. There's a number of people kind of watching on the side. That has to be from the CHP. Those two boom sounds. Yeah, I don't. What is that, Mike? Is that a flash bomb or is that?
It's a mix of tear. Sometimes they're using tear gas. Most of the time they're using tear gas, but they're shooting it out of a launcher. So it shoots and then it delay kind of, I don't want to say explodes, but ignites, and so it looks like a firework. We see it flash like a firework, but it's actually a canister of tear gas.
I wonder where they're shooting it because we're directly in front of them and I don't see them landing. I did see one. Oh wait, I think I see where one of them hit, but we're like directly in front of them. I mean, obviously down the street. So I'm wondering which direction are they firing it toward, like on San Pedro?
Yeah, they're standing in the intersection and they're shooting it towards San Pedro. So there's a couple of officers right there on the corner of the intersection and then shooting it down San Pedro.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like some of the folks that are here still are kind of moving back toward the intersection now. It definitely feels like, like they're not ready to give up this confrontation. But, I would say officers and CHP will have them outnumbered pretty shortly if they don't already.
Well, we're looking at a number of people in your shot where they just look like they're looky-loos or they're there just to see what they can see. Some of them are holding flags. Others we can see running. And a lot of people they're live streaming. They're using this as a social media event. You can tell.
Yeah, exactly, Pat. Yeah, that's so true. Now everyone's running again, so that must mean they fired some sort of pepper spray or some sort of pepper bomb this direction because everybody's surging back. And you can hear the rapid fire boom, boom, boom. They are being more aggressive, meaning the CHP or the officers, and it's in succession. And it's there's a woman I can hear just to my left. She's offering people eye washing if they've been affected by the pepper spray. I actually can't feel any of it yet or taste it. What I can smell and sort of taste is the smell of paint because people are tagging the buildings and the smell is so strong. At first I thought it was pepper spray. And I just saw like the guy next to me, he's moved. He had a huge can of red spray paint in his back pocket. And I don't know if it was him or someone else who has red spray paint, but the building to my right, this federal something building, has got a bunch of red tagged spray paint stuff all over the walls. So there you go. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm seeing more officers now, and I'm seeing fewer in the crowd. You can tell that these tactics are having the desired effect for LAPD officers. There's much fewer people here, and I think that the just sort of shock and awe of the boom, boom, and then of course of the tear gas. It's enough to. I mean, that stuff is very effective. There are people here that have gas masks on, though. There's a lot of people, and sort of face masks as well. But I think there are people here with goggles and all kinds of things to try to stop the spray paint from, or not spray paint, from the pepper spray from affecting them.
And Tom, you're on 2nd Street, or you're on 2nd Street, right?
Yeah, I'm on 2nd Street. I'm looking at the San Pedro sign. Yeah, I'm looking at from my vantage point, so I can see the San Pedro street sign like from the traffic light from where I'm standing, and we're like a half block back. We were right on top of it, for a bit, but then it was just getting too tense and too volatile. Like our photographer here, Anna, who's doing an amazing job, was like, you know, this is the moment, and she was absolutely right, because after that, I think the CHP really started engaging and deploying their, you know, less than lethal tactics.
Well, you know, it's I don't think you can see from our vantage point, Tom, but where those officers have apparently, well, CHP, a lot of them have moved from that front line position further into the crowd, and we've seen the crowd periodically move up these dumpsters, and it almost looked like they were trying to form a line full of dumpsters, as if that would stop law enforcement from coming through. And now we see a vehicle going pretty fast here. Looks like they're going to try to be closer. Now they're going to turn around.
And Pat, I think the officers are pushing forward too. They may be doing that move where they rush forward. Oh,
yeah,
and there's
vehicle was you know, thought at first this car was going to try to go through, but no, they turned around and they're coming back in the opposite direction.
Which really is the best situation.
Okay, so so I don't know. The crowd's responding again. They're kind of pushing back, but I can't really see. Oh, I see. Oh, look, you can see. Yeah, the officers have now formed a line, and they're moving further and further down 2nd Street, and they are pushing the crowd back to the point where. They've almost cleared the entire crowd. Now that a little scary there for a second. I thought there's a Toyota Corolla that accelerated very quickly toward the officers, and it was unclear what it was going to do, but the driver turned around now. So that's good. Everything just seems volatile right now, right? After several days of this, you just don't know. Yeah, no, you know, this is all right.
and Tom, I want to just point out to our viewers really quickly, if we can, put the inset back with Tom in the helicopter, because so where Tom is on 2nd Street, where SkyCal is San Pedro Street. Now you have the officers at the intersection there. They have split into 2 lines. So you have a line of officers that are walking down 2nd Street to where Tom is, and then you have a second line of officers that is walking down San Pedro Street. So earlier when we talked about how on 2nd Street there were 3 blocks of law enforcement officers that were moving through the area, that's why, so that they could split, and half of them could go down 2nd Street, and half of them could go down San Pedro Street. As we begin shortly here, KCAL News at 10, Juan Fernandez, Susie Sa here with us at the anchor desk. This is certainly the most activity we have seen in quite some time tonight, guys.
You know, we thought it was a quieter evening when we came to you last. First of all, during the 7 o'clock hours when we saw the protests really thin out, and the crowds were really thinning out, and there were no dispersal orders officially at the time, but police did have some big vans or a big bus ready to detain people if need be, but we actually didn't see that happen.
By the time that we handed over the newscast to Ruta Bay and Pat, things seemed calm. I walked away feeling like, okay, perhaps the worst of the night is over, but of course, as the evening progressed, we did see things get a little more tense. But there from SkyCal, Mike, you're looking at a pretty clear street. So I'm guessing it's just smaller groups of protesters that are hanging back.
Yeah, well, and thankfully what happened is, and this is what happens every time law enforcement pushes forward, they've splintered. So you had a group go down 2nd, you had a group go down San Pedro, which made the group a lot smaller, which of course is good news, because every time the group splits, that's what we want, is for it to get smaller. So Tom is there on 2nd Street, the chopper is looking at San Pedro Street, and on San Pedro Street anyway, there seems to be a few more people, but they're very, very spread out, and there's even, I think even less people on 2nd Street where Tom is.
All right, for those of us just joining us right now, this is KCAL News at 10 o'clock, another night of protests against immigration raids here in Southern California.
Well, within the last few minutes, things have escalated dramatically, with protesters firing fireworks at police.
And police are out in force in downtown LA. We counted more than 50 police cars, look at this, from departments across Southern California, all lined up and blocking streets.
Well, on night 4 of the protest, police are doing mass arrests. Our KCAL News crew there, as officers are cuffing people who ignored an order to leave.
And the protests also spreading south to Santa Ana. Tensions between police and protesters boiling over, with law enforcement going into the crowd to go after this guy in the yellow hoodie.
Also tonight, Marines are reportedly rolling toward downtown LA after the defense secretary mobilized hundreds of them. Another 2,000 National Guard troops have also been federalized and called up. But what are they all going to do once they get here?
All right, let's go back to our Tom Waite, also in downtown Los Angeles for us tonight, giving us an idea of how things are on the ground for us right now. Tom?
You know what, Juan, right now it just feels a bit tense in the sense that I think there's a lot of anger here out on the street. There's a lot of people who are very, they're frustrated. They feel like some of the tactics out here have been heavy-handed. Again, I'm not saying whether they all have or have not been. I'm just saying I think that there's definitely a sense of, the volatility, the sort of like any moment, tempers could explode. It just feels like that kind of that level of kind of uncertainty, and I think it's been now days and days of people of anger and rage, and what we just saw just play out a few minutes ago was it appeared protesters or people here in the crowd firing fireworks into the line where CHP and LAPD officers were standing, over and over and over again, and CHP then responding by using their less than lethal devices, which included anything from I think it was some sort of pepper spray or pepper bomb. They were firing these canisters, doing whatever they could to kind of get the crowd to disperse, and to a certain extent it is. And I mean, look at the contrast here. We have a food truck right here, just beyond where you have a massive police column. Of kind of where we have all the way down at the end of the block here. So it just gives you a sense of the two different things going on in LA tonight. You have this corner of the city where basically I think the reason why people ended up back in this area is because they were flushed out of the main part of where they were protesting earlier, which was right by the detention center and right by City Hall. Now, of course, police kind of blocked off a lot of those areas starting earlier, and I think that the idea was to not let this go and escalate the way it has in other evenings, just the past few days. So, but I think what happened was the impact was that people moved to this area, but even though it's much further away from where they were, it still was an area with like a sort of tinderbox kind of feel to it, where I think police realized they had to move in, and they did. And there was, obviously some moments where it was pretty tense, where they were firing the fireworks and then the other countermeasures. And so now you have got a number of choppers from police and other agencies. They are in the air, and they are really sort of locking down the intersection. They have already dispersed this crowd. There's still people here standing around kind of watching what's going on, but not engaging the police like they were. They are very much sort of like hanging back and kind of watching now. And we'll see if more people end up leaving, but right now things have calmed down quite a bit.
And Tom, it just goes to show you how quickly things change, right? One moment things are very agitated, the next suddenly, as we're looking here, as you said, the crowd is thinned out. Maybe you have some stragglers there, but it's looking pretty good right now.
Tom, any idea what may have incited that escalation earlier, though? I mean, you've been there all night for hours, and then suddenly this escalation.
Yeah. Susie, I think it's just the continuing crescendo of emotions and anger. There are activists in the crowd, but also there are agitators. I saw a couple of guys with spray paint in their back pockets tagging buildings. That obviously has nothing to do with what's going on, the issue at hand, right? So there are people taking advantage of this. There are people who come here just to cause problems and incite. Whereas, and that, when you have a crowd of people who are already kind of on the edge, can then create an explosive environment. Now we see a lot more police officers, and they're probably going to rush down the street. And let's move back. They're probably going to charge down here, so we're going to move back a little bit. But they are forming a line. But Susie, I think just basically what's happening is it's just a culmination and a gradual building, a simmer that comes to a boil of anger about the ICE issues, and then obviously a lot of these protesters were forced back by police to this area. They were forced away from where they were. So I think there's just, it's just one of those things where the emotions boil over, and you get a bunch of people who are fired up into one tight space and angry and frustrated, and so then you see the volatility kind of unravel from there.
All right, our Tom Waite live there in downtown LA. Thank you so much, Tom.
All right, let's get to our Nicole Comstock live for us in Santa Ana.
Protests also breaking out there, Nicole. Nicole, can you hear us?
Do cable prices have your wallet against the ropes? Are you pinned down by too many streaming services?
Too close behind the police officers and took in a little bit of the pepper from these pepper rounds. Not too much though, so we're still good to go, but we took out. And you can hear what's going on out here. So people are basically lighting off these like giant firecrackers. Sometimes it seems like they're throwing them at police, and then they're also lighting off really big fireworks too. So they kind of do that, they advance on them, and then police out here in Santa Ana pretty much launch those pepper ball rounds immediately, and then they advance down the street toward those protesters who do seem to be moving back. But, you know, we have seen them throwing stuff directly at officers, which is super unfortunate considering these are not the people carrying out any of these immigration enforcement operations. They're literally just responding to vandalism downtown. They're trying to keep law and order in the city to keep things together. And so, unfortunately, they're the ones kind of bearing the brunt of what's going on out here tonight with these protesters. We can get you to some video right now, though. Sorry, I had to clear my throat from that pepper for a second. So the first video we're taking a look at here is the protest earlier tonight. So dozens of people out here descending on the federal building in downtown Santa Ana. Most of them just protesting with signs. However, some people are vandalizing buildings. There's lots of derogatory spray painted messages, some of them just on small businesses out here. Again, more of those fireworks going off. And you guys, I just lost my ability to hear you, but I think you can still hear me, so I'm going to keep on going out here. The next video we have here is you can see the police response from earlier this afternoon from our helicopter. Now, the police tactic, again, they're using smoke to disperse the crowd. They're using pepper balls as well because these protesters just keep advancing on them. Earlier today, another one of our crews, a photographer and a reporter, got hit with these rounds too. So you really got to take a second to just get away from them and continue on toward what's going on out here. Sorry, I'm just tapping right back into our speaker so I can hear you guys. And so that's what they've been dealing with all day. Police just walking in formation down the street. We have another video we wanted to show you because this is like the minority of the people out here in the crowd. Mostly people are kind of just protesting, and then you have a couple of people doing more than everyone else. So this guy in the yellow shirt, if you can see him here, was just taunting the National Guard troops who were protecting the federal building earlier, kept going back for them when they were telling him to leave, and they weren't having any of it. So eventually, a couple of minutes later, they caught up with that guy and detained him, likely arrested him. And, you know, obviously this is a community here in Santa Ana that has a lot of immigrant families, many who just say they're out here standing up for what they believe is right, trying to keep their families together. Santa Ana is Orange County's only sanctuary city, actually, and the police department says they don't work with federal authorities on these immigration enforcement raids, but they say their police departments, their officers also can't use their resources to interfere with them. And so that's how they kind of get caught up in the middle of this, you know, where they have these big fireworks blasting off in the middle of the city at night. This, of course, in response to reports of multiple immigration enforcement operations in Orange County today. Don't have the locations on those confirmed just yet, but this was the result of this out here tonight. Actually, Santa Ana City Council members last month moved toward a program that would create an alert system to notify people if they get word of any immigration enforcement operation. Unclear if anyone got the word of that in advance of this today, but they have certainly mobilized out here this afternoon and tonight to, you know, make their stance out here and say they don't believe that these raids are right. Obviously, some of these activities we're seeing out here are not appropriate behavior either. Probably not helping the cause, but most of the people out here in the crowd are just kind of saying whatever messages they have. You can see all those police down here in the street, and again, we have dozens of National Guard troops behind us with Humvees. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Yeah, we're seeing things change minute by minute, hour by hour out there, Nicole. All right, thank you for that.
All right, we're going to continue our live team coverage now with KCAL's Lori Perez, also live in downtown LA for us tonight. Just Lori.
Yeah, we're actually not that far from where Tom is, but boy, what a difference it is where we are. This is an intersection that not so long ago was filled with protesters facing off with police. Then about an hour ago, police started to cuff people after repeated announcements asking them to go home, telling them to leave this area. They started to cuff people. I know we have some video of them taking people into custody and then loading them up on these big white LAPD buses that we see that they use when they start to make mass arrests. And so we saw that about an hour ago. They took away 2 full buses, maybe about 40 people who had been standing off with police for hours on different intersections throughout downtown Los Angeles. In the time since they started putting the cuffs on, now this intersection is pretty clear, but for about 3 or 4 protesters on one side and then 2 protesters on the other side. In fact, you know, we were just remarking it's pretty surprising at the number of LAPD officers who remain lined up on this intersection facing off with just a handful of protesters. Of course, we don't know their strategy. We don't know if they're you know, posted up here in case that situation where Tom is starts to get mobile and move in this direction. But, you know, still quite a force of LAPD officers situated here again in the Arts District. They've been here for hours now. Everybody kind of waiting and watching to see how the rest of this night plays out. But for now, it is calm on this corner in downtown Los Angeles. Again, such a stark contrast to where Tom Waite is, which is not so far from where we are at all. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, no doubt. And Lori, regarding those people that were being arrested, it looks like they are being taken in. It's not like a cite and release and off they go. They are being taken in to get booked.
Yes, that's right. We saw them loaded up on the buses. Again, 2 full buses, probably about 40 people. Yeah, they were loaded up and they were taken away from here. So they have a long night ahead.
Yeah, clear message that they're not playing around with these protests. If they catch you vandalizing or breaking the law, they're going to take you in.
Absolutely. Well, as we watch these crowds thin out in downtown LA, we want to show you these pictures of protesters still in the streets of downtown LA tonight, still making their presence known, and the LAPD still doing so as well. Mike was telling us earlier that many more officers are actually possibly on shift tonight if they were needed, as a citywide tactical alert was issued earlier tonight, right, Mike?
Yeah, citywide tactical alert was issued tonight. It was in effect last night, you know, the nights before that. As we watch this group, there's bars over those windows, but you've got the, so now we're starting to swipe it.
Skateboarder, see that, Mike?
Yeah. Hopefully they don't, you know, it didn't look like a real hard effort, so hopefully it doesn't actually get into anything there, because the last thing we want is to start seeing businesses being looted like we did see the last night. So this is the crowd as the chopper kind of moves around. We can show you some video here. This is the crowd that really got active with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, the California Highway Patrol. Excuse me, we watched as they started to put on gas masks here, as fireworks were being thrown at officers. CHP responding very quickly after kind of being overwhelmed for a brief moment with those fireworks, but really CHP do their thing. That crowd moved fast, and by do their thing, I mean lots of flashbangs, tear gas, all of those things that were put at those protesters that caused them to splinter off into 2 different groups, one down San Pedro and one down 2nd Street. Now, I also want to show you some more video, because we also saw a drone flying through this area. Now, it's more than likely just for recording purposes and for video, and you know, right there in the middle of the picture in the cloud below the traffic signal, you see it now flying to the left of the screen. What's unfortunate, though, Chief Jim McDonald said yesterday that they even encountered, or today rather, he said today that yesterday they encountered people with 2-way radios that were communicating with each other and being able to coordinate. So hopefully that drone was not a part of any of that effort and just a terrible social media kind of stunt that some people are trying to do. Now, I want to show you more here, because we saw this last night. We're seeing a little bit tonight where these protesters are trying to do makeshift barricades, essentially. We watched as this dumpster was given one good push and pushed into the line of the CHP officers. Thankfully, it didn't have that much momentum, and CHP was able to just get it to kind of stop where it was right there without it doing any more harm. We'll take you back out live now to the helicopter that is kind of monitoring the situation. You see that very large contingent of Ventura County Sheriff's Office, CHP, all of those different agencies that are now here trying to deal with this, guys.
And Mike, they're going to stay here as long as needed, right?
As long as needed. Mutual aid is in effect until it's not. You know, the sheriff is in control of that here in LA County, and he has said that we will do this as long as we need to. And we've got the support, they say, of our partner agencies from the CHP, Ventura County Sheriff. All of the San Gabriel Valley cities have been there. We've seen a lot going on, guys.
So even if the street's clear of protesters, law enforcement's still going to stay out there, right?
Yeah.
And just in case as day breaks for Tuesday here.
Exactly.
Downtown LA.
Yep.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Let's get live now to our Nicole Comstock live in Santa Ana. Nicole.
Yeah, well, things are getting a little crazier out here now. So just about 20 seconds ago, we had someone launch another big one of those directly at police, and they do not like that. And the LA County Sheriff's deputies out here as well. So you can see them posted up now in the center of Broadway and 4th in Santa Ana, and they're still using those pepper ball rounds. I don't know if you can see the officer with these like pepper ball guns they're using to shoot them in the direction of protesters. But of course, you know, right after they throw these big firecrackers and fireworks in the direction of law enforcement officers, then they kind of like run back down the street again. So it's basically a game of cat and mouse out here tonight, where they're trying to push them down the road as far as they can away from the federal building, which is where we have dozens of National Guard troops protecting that building tonight with a fleet of Humvees. They also have all the roads around that blocked off tonight. We see some more LA County Sheriff's deputies over here to the right of us. So I think we have, I'm not sure if you can see this, Ben, we have another group maybe of protesters down this street. So throughout the night, they've kind of been moving around, sort of staying in the same area, but they'll go down one street and then pop up around the corner. And so it takes a lot of coordination on the part of the sheriff's deputies and police departments to kind of stay ahead of the game and see where these people are coming from. Again, not everyone in the crowd is behaving this way. A lot of people are just kind of yelling at police. They have signs, and there's a couple people in the crowd who continue to throw these explosives in the direction of law enforcement officers. But again, you know, the president called in the National Guard, more of those troops today to help keep law and order in some of these communities dealing with these protests. But they are behind the police officers. So, you know, unfortunately, these police officers and local sheriff's deputies are not the ones that have anything to do with these immigration raids, and they're dealing with the brunt of what's going on out here tonight. Another thing we're seeing is just a ton of graffiti on a lot of the buildings downtown here, and some of them are just small businesses like coffee shops that have, you know, derogatory messages about ICE scrolled on the side of them now. So, you know, you wonder how much money it costs to clean up the graffiti, clean up the trash, whatever other things are vandalized, and just the amount of overtime all of these law enforcement officers, you know, are going to rack up being out here to make sure that businesses don't get broken into and people don't get hurt out here. I don't know if you can see in the center of the road here too, there's tire marks. So when the protesters come, there might be one of them on a motorcycle or in a car that's kind of doing donuts in the center of the road. But that's the most of what we are seeing out here tonight, and hopefully things settle down soon, but it doesn't seem like it. So we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Yeah, Nicole, we have SkyCal over your location right now. We've seen the fireworks being set off there in your area. Earlier today, we saw that one guy in the yellow hoodie who was taunting officers. He was taken into custody. Have you seen anybody else in your area there being taken into custody, Nicole, and being taken away? Because as you said, this kind of game of cat and mouse eventually is going to get old. These officers are going to perhaps move in and arrest somebody.
Yeah, I'm sure they're super tired of it at this point. Maybe at about 8:30ish, we saw them walking one person over to the back of a police car, so it seemed like they were detaining that person, but we didn't have eyes on what they were doing before that, so I don't know if that was somebody who was lighting off fireworks or just like getting up in the law enforcement officers' faces or going into an area they weren't supposed to be in. But we haven't seen any other arrests or detentions going on out here. We haven't seen police officers moving into an area with like any handcuffs or the little zip ties that they sometimes use at these things. So it doesn't seem to me like they have a big plan in place yet to start detaining people. It seems like they're just continuing down the street and hope that people eventually go home before things get to that point. But they are being successful in keeping people farther away from the federal building, which is what the National Guard is working on protecting tonight.
Yeah, from SkyCal, you can see definitely the officers there in place, and it's hard to even pinpoint where the protesters are in this shot, right, Susie?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can see that they're spread out just like they are in downtown LA. And speaking of downtown LA, we want to go back now to our Tom Waite, who's live there on the ground. He has a report for us. He's seen some people running just in the last minute. Tom?
Yeah, we are running out of the area because it is being overrun. It's, I don't know if you could roll back our tape about our video from TOC for about 30 seconds ago. It was absolutely, it was, I've never seen anything like that or been that close to anything like that before. It was a rapid fire. I think there was less than lethal rounds being fired by police along with flashbangs. I'm not even sure what else they were shooting, but they were responding to the crowd, which was getting increasingly hostile. It was getting more confrontational. People were getting more and more angry and throwing more and more things at the police and CHP. So we're trying to get back to our truck right now and avoid any sort of incident. We just ran through the shopping mall that was right next to where all this was unfolding near the intersection of San Pedro and
yeah, we saw you just walk through the Little Tokyo shopping plaza there, Tom, walking away with some of the protesters as well.
Some lovely shops in there, I will say. Unfortunately, not able to stop at them. But yeah, this was very a very scary situation that's just played out there, and having seen what protesters were doing, they were throwing things at police. The response from police was to push the crowd back and to use intense tactics to break up the crowd and to try and disperse the crowd. This crowd has been sort of lingering here for a while, and it's been like a pressure cooker. It's been building and building. It's a lot of remnants from people who were down by City Hall earlier, and so what they were trying, I think what happened was as police were getting them to fall back, they ended up in this area, and look, we still see more of, I think that's the crowd over there that. Yeah, hey, Anna, let's go. Hey, we're gonna let you guys go. We gotta be safe here. We'll be back with you once we're clear.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. We're going to keep SkyCal above the scene there where you see, and Susie, you can just see how quickly things change from being very calm to all of a sudden you have to find a safe place to go.
Absolutely, and as Tom was talking about, this crescendo, of passions kind of, bubbling up, right? They're very calm. The LAPD is calm, obviously, because that's the stance that they want to take. Let these protesters protest and make their voices heard, but at the same time, when they start getting out of hand like that, Mike, I mean, that's when they're going to step in and say, hey, that's enough.
Yeah, and I did go back and look at Tom's recording, because obviously we're always recording on our crews, but when they're not on the air. And CHP did start to pop off some flashbangs. So CHP was shooting flashbangs in the direction of Tom and where he was, and that's where all those protesters were as well. And excuse the chopper, they're kind of moving around right now. But that is what was happening, and that's what caused that crowd to start to kind of bolt and go into different directions here. As they were trying to, continue to move that crowd. Now, the crowd was on the move, and they were going towards, continuing down that street. What you heard in the back was LAPD moving around as well, trying to reposition themselves also to be into a situation where they can kind of deal with all of this. And for us, we're trying to figure out what the chopper is getting an eye on here, but we'll get that sorted out in just a second. But yeah, CHP, Ventura County Sheriffs, they were in control of that. Looked like LAPD was coming to join the party. They had been primarily dealing with that other crowd where Lori Perez was. They were taking into custody some of the other protesters that just, were kind of refusing to leave. We're following this ambulance here. We'll figure out in a second what's going on with it, but it's over near Boyle Heights area, Lincoln Heights rather, where the county general is. So that's what's going on right now. We know that they are trying to get that crowd in downtown LA under control and get them to around and get them out of the area. I'll check to see what they've lawful assembly. But again, we know that the other agencies were kind of taking over that area.
And so far, Mike, we haven't gotten any numbers of injuries or people being transported because of being injured at any of these protests, right?
No, I mean, we had heard Okay, so we're getting some information that there may be an officer being transported here to Los Angeles County General. So that's why the chopper is here looking. We'll see if it's this ambulance right here, what's going on. But, the chief had said, or there was a statement this morning that said 5 officers had been injured, but we had understood it to be injured, but not to the point where they had to go to the hospital. Injured to the point where they were able to be treated on scene and kind of evaluated. We had also known that 5 horses were also injured because the mounted unit, which is not out tonight, but the mounted unit was out yesterday, and man, they went through it last night. I mean, there was a Molotov cocktail that was thrown at them. They were dealing with it. So we'll see this ambulance is pulling up to Los Angeles County General Medical Center near the Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights area. That's Rescue 1 from the LA City Fire Department. So we'll see if they end up pulling out an officer here. We're working on the details of figuring out how potentially that officer was injured, if that's the situation. Obviously, LA County General is the closest hospital to the downtown area where, they would be taking this person, should they be injured. We should know here in just a couple seconds.
We'll see here in a second, Mike, but usually when an officer is injured, wouldn't he be escorted with another officer that would come in a black and white?
Yeah, potentially. We just don't know the circumstances. I mean, there may be 2 officers back there that are escorting them, but yes, one, I agree with you that there would be usually a patrol car that would be following along here with the officer. So if that's the situation, maybe it's logistical, they don't have enough or what have you, excuse me, what have you, but we'll see in a second here if that's the situation. It's kind of hard to tell with these situations. We see an ambulance coming, they'll maybe think that it's an officer, but we'll have to see when this person gets out. I can't really tell.
Brought out on the stretcher now.
Yeah. Nope, not a law enforcement officer.
Not with the
That's just
beard.
another person going to the hospital. So, that's the situation there. We'll work on getting some more information, but clearly we're over LA General Medical Center.
All right, good to know that it wasn't an officer.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks,
Let's
Mike.
go back now to downtown LA. Our Lori Perez there on the ground to give us this update. Lori.
Yeah, we're at 3rd and Alameda, where behind me you might be able to see just the final few cars of LAPD. They are moving and leaving from this intersection after they were successful in clearing it. Just a few hours ago, it was filled with protesters who were facing off with law enforcement. But after repeated commands for them to disperse and to leave or face arrest, police started to cuff people. And in fact, we saw them cuff about 30 to 40 people, load them up on LAPD buses, white buses, and take them away. So, there were only so many times that they were going to warn people. And after doing that repeatedly, they got to work and cleared this intersection. It's remarkable because we aren't that far from where Tom Wade is and where there really is a hot spot in terms of activity. And there's none of that here at this point, at least. So that just shows you how difficult it must have been for LAPD and other law enforcement to kind of handle what was happening around the city, because there were these little hot spots for the last 4 nights now all around the city in different ways, in different places. So they really had to keep their eyes and ears open as they handled dynamic situations throughout different parts of the city. And you know what? We have a little bit of a situation here, so I'm going to let you go as well.
Yeah, we see that. Lori, be safe out there. We're going to go back up to SkyCal over the Santa Ana area.
Yeah, I wanted to point this out to you guys, Juan and Susie, because it's the first time we've seen the National Guard on the move, kind of. Now, I want to be clear, the federal building is right there. That is the federal building to the left. So they are still near federal property, but this is the first time we've seen National Guard in vehicles and not, kind of standing on the steps of a federal building. So I just wanted to point that out. John's been looking up and down the street. I don't believe they're going any closer to the protesters, but this is the first time that I have seen, you see one over here too. So this is the first time I have seen National Guard troops in vehicles and being a little bit more mobile than they have been in Westwood and in downtown LA. So I just wanted to show you that to you. We'll give you some context. They're not far from the protesters. There's a line of Orange County Sheriff's deputies, and then further up here is the protesters, which this crowd looks like it is thinned from what it was earlier when we were talking to Nicole, and even when SkyCal was looking at it earlier. So hopefully this situation is starting to diffuse itself as well. But I just wanted to show you that the National Guard is a little bit mobile in Orange County, which we have not necessarily seen them be that way in LA County.
Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. Crypto is making headlines. Will this cycle
and be kind of looking out that way? I mean, they're used in more, I don't want to not call this a serious situation, but where more force would be used, where you would have somebody that needs to stick out at the top of it to potentially have eyes on something, or in very serious situations, use it as a mechanism to be able to sit up there and use a gun in that situation. This one doesn't have that. That's more of a regular type of Humvee there. But yeah, I mean, this is what you would see with a militarized group of people. This is a military group. This is the National Guard, and this is the type of equipment that they use.
And it looks like they're scattered along the street there to keep people from coming back, right?
Yeah, because that's the federal. So Santa Ana it has a kind of a decently large federal complex here. So you've got the federal, John, I think you said it's a courthouse, right? That taller building? Yeah, federal courthouse is the taller building, and then you've got some other federal buildings a little bit to the left down, that John was going to show us here. That's also a federal building as well. So they're a bit more spread out. It's almost a little bit like the Westwood campus. This is where we were earlier. So this is where we were showing you, and there's those federal agents that are still standing there, but now they're taking a little bit of a break. But this is where that clash with all those protesters was happening. That guy in the yellow hoodie that Nicole and we showed you earlier, that is where the bulk of this activity was happening. And then, John, show us just the straight line, because they've pushed those guys from there just all the way down the street. And if we go all the way down the street, we'll end up back at those businesses. So Santa Ana PD and now the Orange County Sheriff's Department has just been pushing them straight down to this location where there's only a few of them left at this hour.
They're blocks and blocks away from the federal building, Mike, that's for sure.
Yeah, lots of pushing they've been doing. And it looks like they're, I mean, to the point where we're even getting traffic moving here, and they're up on a sidewalk. Is that a protester is directing traffic, it looks like? Well, that's nice of them.
They're crowding that corner there, and maybe even directing some traffic. But what you were looking at, those National Guard units on the move for the first time that we've seen actually in Santa Ana tonight. And they are just a few of the 2,000 who are already here in place in Southern California. And then we're going to be adding, according to President Trump, 2,000 more in the coming days. So it should be interesting to see how that all pans out and where they're actually positioned.
Plus the 700 Marines.
Plus the 700 Marines that we're talking about that were also deployed to come here. You know, and it makes you wonder where they will all be. Where they all, you know, will they all be in Westwood and in downtown LA where these federal buildings are that they're guarding right now? Will they just add more to that, beef that staff up, or will they be placed in other areas? We've heard reports of more of these raids by ICE coming our way in the coming days, so that could also be support for that as well.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been official. We've been hearing the number 30 days of possible raids happening in Southern California here, which of course, we've seen these raids started on Friday of last week, and you see what happened 4 nights later where we are tonight. So the uncertainty definitely has the community concerned. And as you see here from SkyCal in the Santa Ana area here, looks like a lot of the protesters have dispersed. They're further away from the federal building right now, but the National Guard is in place. And Mike, we could safely say that the ones that came, the Marines that came from 29 Palms should be in town already.
Yeah, you know, they should be. They've been moving down. We saw them come out of 29 Palms. Riverside Sheriff gave them an escort. San Bernardino Sheriff gave them an escort as well. But we've kind of lost track of them since then. I do have a camera on the 10 freeway in the El Monte area, and we've been trying to watch to see if that's where they'll, you know, come through. That's the most logical area because in theory they would come down from 29 Palms into the Palm Springs area, through Riverside into San Bernardino, and then into LA County. But it just depends on where they're going, right? We don't know if they're going to go sit at Westwood, where that would make the most sense. That's the largest federal piece of property, because as we talked about earlier, there's not coordination with city and local officials. So where do they go? Right? When we've seen them here in the past, they've used the Rose Bowl, they've used the LA Convention Center. It doesn't seem, as we're on the right side of your screen watching these people do a makeshift barricade and block off the street with a fence there, it's unclear where the Marines are actually going to be staged. Westwood would make the most sense just because of the amount of land that is over there. I mean, truthfully, if you wanted to, you've got the VA over there too, which has a ton of land as well. Yeah. So we'll have to see. We haven't seen them. I was just going through the feed. I have not seen them come across the 10 freeway yet. It doesn't mean that they'll come that way. They may go a different way, but you know, we're trying to sort that out. But yes, I mean, based on, you know, if you do the math the right way, they should be coming into the LA area fairly soon. There was, and we were trying to get some, you know, confirmation on it. There was a video that got posted in San Bernardino County where a guy actually blocked them while they were on the road, and San Bernardino Sheriff took that person into custody. That person, one of the reasons that I don't think I can get a hold of him is because he was arrested for impeding traffic and kind of refusing those orders. Again, this is all according to him. He posted a live stream video from inside the back of a cop car of all of that going down. So who knows if they made, you know, other stops along the way, if there was other complications getting here. We'll have to figure that all out. I'm sure we will in the coming days, if not tonight in the morning, figure out exactly where they ended up.
Yeah, by daybreak they should be in place for sure, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, thank you.
All right, what you're looking at live here is the city of Santa Ana and the remnants of the protests there.
Let's go back to our Nicole Comstock live in Santa Ana. Nicole?
Yeah, and you guys can see all these Santa Ana police officers, more of them filing in down the street here in response to, these protesters that keep moving more into downtown Santa Ana. Most of them are not really doing that much. They're kind of yelling, they're swearing. There's some graffiti on some of the buildings here, but some of them are taking big firecrackers and fireworks and launching them directly at police and the LA County Sheriff's deputies who are out here, and they're landing like feet away from them and feet away from us. It's just startling when they go off because they're extremely loud. And you can see right down the road from us here, that line that police have, they're kind of trying to force these protesters more and more down the road. But basically when they line up again, there's another round of these fireworks. Someone will come in the center of the street and like take a motorcycle or a car and like do donuts. And then like I said earlier, it's that game of cat and mouse. Look at this guy over here, like accidentally pulled up a little too far. And you can see these police officers with their weapons trained on him for him to go down that way. So I don't even think that guy maybe has anything to do with this. He just went down the wrong road here. Important to note, too, that there are some people who are just kind of downtown, maybe didn't know this was going on or do know, and are continuing to eat dinner at least one of the restaurants we saw. There's like a Korean barbecue place 2 streets down this way, and while police are marching down the street and people are lighting off firecrackers and protesting, people are actually just eating in the restaurant like it's not going on outside. So it's definitely like not the whole downtown being taken over. It's concentrated to like 1 or 2 streets that these people are kind of moving around in a circle. Over this way too, if we can, sorry if you got to turn around all the way, Ben, you can see the National Guard too. They're kind of moving down the street with police as well, starting at the Federal Building, and then if they call them in to give backup, they kind of move up the street and get a little bit closer to them. So we're definitely seeing them move in and seeing more of a police and law enforcement presence out here tonight. Like you guys mentioned, it does seem like the protesters, the size of the crowd here is dwindling a lot, but definitely a lot of shenanigans out here. You can hear cars kind of burning out down the road too. So still a couple people out here causing problems for police.
Buddy there kind of like hanging out in the intersection with a giant patio umbrella, kind of taunting officers a little bit, or at least trying to get their attention. There it is right there. You see that patio umbrella and someone just right behind it there. So like you said, there's people out enjoying a dinner with somebody, and then you have the situation here with the umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mixed crowd, as we saw also in downtown LA as well. People who are there for the purpose of protesting the actual issue, people who are there to protest just to protest, not the specific issue, but sometimes just to incite violence and trouble. And others who are just going about their night and just thinking, hey, I'm just going to be having dinner in the middle of all this, as Nicole was talking about. But, as you can see from the stance of the Santa Ana police officers here, they're still in the street. This is still a protest here on the streets of Santa Ana tonight, and it has been going on for hours since this afternoon, Juan, as we know. And it still really has a lot of people still there out on the streets, as we've been talking about, not only police officers. I mean, these police officers, as long as this crowd is out here, they have to be out here to protect people, to make sure people are safe, to make sure everything is being handled okay. They still have to be out there.
Right, and everything is so fluid, Susie. Just a few moments ago, we saw them setting fireworks off in the middle of the street. The situation seemed very tense, and now there seems to be like a lull in the action there. But the difference is we've seen the National Guard move in. They've been scattered through the street there, and they have it looks like 4 officers per unit covering north, south, east, and west of those intersections. There they are right there, protecting not only the businesses that you see there, but also making sure that these protesters stay away.
And not too long ago, we saw the National Guard troops on the move there with their Humvee. We don't know where they're going or why they were moving, but as Mike Rogers at the desk mentioned, he pointed out that was actually the first time we saw them moving or mobilizing in any way away from the Federal Building, where they have been all day long protecting that building. It looks like there's some sort of street
blockage here. You know, I don't know if it, you know, police put that up or if perhaps someone else put that up, but a big sign and, you know, blockage of the street there. And people are still here to protest at this hour. Nicole, have you noticed this crowd get thinner and thinner? Are you adding to the crowd tonight at all?
Yeah, there are fewer people out here tonight. We noticed probably starting at about 8:30 and 9 o'clock. A lot of the younger